Hey, welcome, Doooovid here. Just starting. Hopefully, we're going to have Halsey English joining us, and our first time on my channel. Very honored that he's going to be joining us, and hopefully, Erika from the Harsh Reality. So, if you were tuning in for the Democratic primary debates, it was relatively uneventful. If anyone in the chat, wants to add in, but we'll talk about our predictions, our analysis, who's running. Um, if Halsey comes in a minute or two, I'll do a quick screen share of some data. So I thought I'd show real quick, important thing, the money. So from my understanding is they're going to have to file their fundraising July 15th. So in like 2.5 weeks, that'll be a big issue, how much money they've raised. And then there's also from 125,000 different donors for the different debates. But we see, President Trump, and it's probably much more than this, we'll see in a few weeks, close to $100 million. Bernie Sanders got over $20 million. John Delaney, a lot of money. If you saw him in the debate tonight, didn't sound that great, or, he was interesting. He's focused on climate change, but he's got a lot of money, $18 million. Elizabeth Warren, obviously major senator, Boston, banking committee, lots of money. Kamala Harris, lots of money. The senators, Jill DeBrand, Hillary Clinton's protege from New York, a lot of money. Beto O'Rourke, even though he lost against Ted Cruz, he's still got quite a bit of money. Klobuchar's got a lot of money. Booker's got, decreasing money. Tulsi Gabbard is a congresswoman. She's who I'm kind of rooting for. So she's still got a decent amount of money. She's polling at less than 1%. We'll look at the polls. Mayor Pete has got almost $7 million. And going down, Andrew Yang, $2.5 million. Bunch to Tim Ryan, the different people. De Blasio, we'll see how much money he has. He declared later. So he's mayor of New York, so it's conceivable he could get substantial amounts of money, but that's going to be important. So it's gotta. So hopefully Erika looks like she says she's going to be joining. So I was going to stream on her channel, and she mentioned to me that, I thought I had this idea, like, let's talk. Oh, Halsey's here. Welcome, Halsey, to my channel. Honored to have you first time on our channel. We've spoken many times in different places. First time, welcome to my channel.
Hi, it's great to be here. Really happy to be here. So what's going on? You want to talk about the Democrats?
Yeah, I'm a pretty topical person, so I thought I'd keep the stream kind of like purely to the presidential election and the Democrats. I guess you were streaming while the debate was going on. I watched the debate. You didn't miss that much. There was nothing like huge, eventful stuff. I was just going over how much money the candidates have, because that'll be a big factor. And presumably, as long as people have money in the bank, they're not going to be dropping out anytime soon.
So I saw a couple interesting things today. Number one, Sanders is not ruling out running third party if he doesn't get the nomination. And I think that's a direct response to the fact that Biden jumped in right when it seemed like Sanders was leading the pack. It seems like they kind of drafted Biden to get Sanders, put down because they don't think Sanders can win. So he might actually run as a third party. And if he does, I have a feeling that it'll just destroy any chance the Democrats have, because they'll split the vote.
Yeah, we could move into examining what the election is going to look like, who wins, like if Sanders has any potential. Let me show this real quick, the most recent polling data. Okay, this woman, I was going to stream with her tonight, Erika, the Harsh Reality, who I met from No Apologies, should be joining in a few minutes. So we'll see if she has anything to add. So let me just show this polling data. If you're looking, this is 538, a page that's collected like 100 different polling data. It also has state by state. We see, according to most of the polls, Biden has a huge lead. Some of them is like 50, depends how they ask. And then number 2, Sanders. Number 3, Warren. Even to be in the high single digits, to have Harris, O'Rourke, Buttigieg, It doesn't look like Booker is breaking more than 5% on any of them. Yang, like 1-2%. Gildebrand hasn't been doing very good in the polls. Klobuchar, Tulsi Gabbard, who's the candidate I like. I think they're, I'll discuss with you why I think Gabbard might emerge quite well. So you got to go on the next page to see, she's only like 0.3% at the highest. The people, De Blasio, 1%. I think we're going to have to see if any of these candidates drop out in the next debate. So they're pumping up you need 125,000 unique donors and 2% in the polls. So we'll see if people like Yang and how many people make it to the next. But just looking at the polls, you see that Biden obviously has huge name recognition. Obama's VP, so he's polling the best. Sanders, he was right there in the election last time. Elizabeth Warren's kind of like the media hopeful. The different people are pushing her. Harris, who knows? Like Booker, they'll probably be around. Like I showed the money, as long as they have tens of millions of dollars to waste running for the election. I can't imagine them dropping out, no matter how bad they do.
So what a lot of them are doing is they're going for a VP spot. Cory Booker is one of those people who's going for a VP spot. Knoblocher and De Blasio and all these people, they're all going for a VP spot. None of them have a prayer of winning the primary, and they know it, right? The only person who can give Biden a run for his money supposedly is Sanders, and right now Warren is giving Sanders a run for his money because she appears to be just a little bit less ancient than he is. Now, Tulsi Gabbard would be the candidate that if the Democrats nominated her, she would win. But the problem is that the Democratic establishment absolutely despises her because they believe that she sunk Clinton when she was running against Obama when she endorsed Sanders before Sanders even had like any votes in the primary. So they despise Tulsi Gabbard. They treat her the same way the Republicans treat Ted Cruz.
Yeah, because presidential elections are largely popularity contests. When I'm looking at it, I actually would think Gabbard has the best chance of beating Trump. Okay, she's only a representative. She only has a bachelor's degree in like business administration. She's probably never made more than, whatever $150,000 a year she's making now as a congresswoman. That's the most amount of money she's ever made in her life. She's a Hindu and all these different things. But in terms of the popularity contest on the stage, I could see her beating Trump. I don't see any of the other people beating Trump. But yeah, everything's stacked against her in terms of that. So, the one thing that might make it interesting, like the Republican nominees in 2016 or 15, when the primaries were going on, that there were so many of them that Trump was in the low 20s, but that was enough to hold them in there. Being in the low 20s kept him in first place the whole time. So I can't picture Biden winning, but if you keep like 10 candidates in there, I don't think any of them are going to have much more than 20%, and that might leave a venue for someone like Gabbard to sneak in there, just due to the general public saying, I hate all these other people, I'm going to go Gabbard.
It could. I mean, listen. I after seeing Trump kind of sneak up and do it, it's possible. What I actually think is that I've been saying this for months, so this is nothing new. I think the Democrats want Trump to win. I don't think they want to take the presidency this time around. So
you mean the Democratic National Committee, the Democratic Establishment Party?
Yeah, they're getting everything they could ever want from him, and they're getting it by moving the goalpost so far left that when they finally do take power again, I mean, who was talking about completely open borders or abortion right up until birth before Trump? That was the Democrats never even bothered to get those things on the table. Now that everything Trump says is considered like basically the Nazis, it's that they can get, and Trump's cucking on almost everything. Every time anything's put in front of him, he basically cucks out to them anyway. So I don't think they're unhappy with Trump. I think that Trump provides them everything they want, which is why when I think Warren and Sanders were gaining steam, they convinced Biden to throw his hat in the ring because they know that in the end that Trump will trounce Biden, especially after a debate.
So you want to give your overview, like any of the candidates, what you're thinking, or you just think none of them are even that interesting?
So, I mean, literally, I mean, I saw about 15 minutes of the debate and I just decided to move on because all they were doing was just promising who could give more shit away to everybody else. And none of them were answering any questions except for like, what do you think about this? Well, I'll give you away lots of shit. So, I mean, all of them are going to bring about socialism and all of them are going to push socialism in a way that's going to harm the country. So I don't want an Elizabeth Warren. I don't want a Bernie Sanders. I don't want a Guerrilla Harris or, any of them anywhere near me or my country. So, but I think a lot of them are shooting for vice president, especially Cory Booker, Guerrilla Harris. I don't think Tulsi Gabbard's going for vice president because I don't think anyone would give it to her unless they were stupid, because there's too much heat at the bottom of the ticket if that's the case. She's going to upshow anybody that gets elected president.
He's the only one that's really likable. Saying if you're looking at like none of these people are likable.
But look at every vice president that we've had for the last, as long as you can remember. Okay. Reagan had Bush. Bush had Dan Quayle. Clinton had Gore. Bush 2 had Cheney. Obama had Biden. Trump has Pence. You don't want someone with more heat than you at the bottom of the ticket, because then people wonder why they're voting for the top of the ticket if the bottom of the ticket has so much heat. So, and I mean heat being a good thing. Like, I mean, you don't want to put someone more charismatic, more energetic, that has better policy views than you at the bottom of the ticket. You want to just put someone safe and boring that can help guarantee you a state that you'd have trouble winning.
Yeah, for people who, I don't know, we got 23 viewers, so I'm glad maybe they'll even pick up some more. So I don't know, people in the chat, if they watched the whole thing. It looked like at the beginning that they were trying to give the most, mic and attention to Elizabeth Warren, but she wasn't really able to do anything with it, her like basic talking points or her kind of policy. So when she talks, she has like this kind of like policy, geeky Harvard law professor angle that isn't that interesting. She couldn't really fill the stage out. So the second half, they switched. I guess the first half they had different moderators, and then the second half they switched moderators. So the first half it looked like they were blatantly like kept on putting the ball in Elizabeth Warren, and she couldn't really do anything with it. The second half was a little bit more that like the only real back and forth was between Tim Ryan and Tulsi Gabbard on the war, where he was kind of saying that they got to keep the troops in Afghanistan and clamp down. So that was really the only back and forth I saw. A few of them made like the appeal de Blasio, whose father died from injuries from the war, and Cory Booker, and I assume you probably know plenty of people who know in real life Cory Booker, and he's very friendly with the Jewish community, and he's got compelling stories, and he'll probably make it till the end. I would assume Cory Booker, even if he's only polling the low percentages, will probably make it past like the first few states in the primary. But it was kind of non-eventful. There's the one guy whose big issue is climate change, and he also has significant amount of money in the bank, but it's unlikely he's going to pick up any steam. So it's almost hard to try to pump these people up. There's like 20 people, and I could go through the Wikipedia and we could probably go down their bios of each one of the candidates, but it's hard to even find them interesting. It's almost irritating. If you think the viewership count, we'll see the data tomorrow. I saw NBC had like close to 400,000 live viewers on YouTube, which is probably more than MSNBC gets on cable these days.
Which is true.
I wouldn't be surprised if the viewership for these debates is actually relatively low. And I kind of, because my grandparents always watched Sunday morning news, like Meet the Press. And for years, like I watched all of them, like ABC and, This Week with George Stephanopoulos and Meet the Press and CBS, because my grandparents did. But the last few months, like I don't even watch those. Like they keep on having interviews with the candidates, and I can't even. And my mother is an active Democrat, liberal, and she can't even bring herself to watch the interviews with these people.
Well, because they're so full of shit. I mean, Warren is an example of how bad the Democrats are in general. Her thing about having that DNA test live on TV where they told her she was 1024th Indian. And she's like, oh my God, thank you so much for proving that my mother was not a liar, and she has said in public debates before that her father and mother had to elope because her father's family wouldn't accept the fact that her mother was a Native American. Like the fact that literally Elizabeth Warren makes up whatever she feels like for the moment and just spews it out, and people consider her bold. People think that she actually has a great grasp of policy when she actually doesn't. So and just so you know, Doooovid, real quick, you can sign up for a Streamlabs account without having any subscriber amounts, so people can still donate to you without having to monetize your YouTube channel.
I created a Streamlabs, and actually I created a Patreon because I saw that JApp stream, and they said they were changing the rules that if you didn't create it by a certain day, the percentages would change. Well, I haven't activated them, and I'm not asking for donations. I do have a Streamlabs, but if people in the chat have something, I know Hypatia, who probably, I know you're super chatting on JApps all the time, and I appreciate you joining the stream. Could you see Tulsi wanting so bad to tell everyone Al Qaeda is funded and protected by the CIA? Could be, like, I don't know, like, like what you were saying about Elizabeth Warren, like, yeah, her story is just not compelling, and when you look into her story, the more you look into it, the more you're going to see holes in it. So
right.
Cory Booker might have a compelling story.
So I know him. He when he was running for mayor of Newark, which is only like maybe 15 minutes away from my house.
You said you were shaking his hand like 20 times.
His office was on the same floor as mine. So I used to see him all the time. I talked to him probably 1,000 times during that time period. And first of all, almost everyone I know thinks he's gay, including me. So either he's going to lie about it, and then if it comes out, it'll be considered not a strength because he felt the need to lie about it so long, or he's just waiting to actually say like I'm bi or something like that because he's going to use it as like he's black, he's bi, he's all of these things. But I don't think Cory's going for president. I think he's going for vice president. That's why I think because all the minorities that are running know they add something to the ticket. Right. And they do, especially if Biden or Sanders or Warren win it, because this whole, white thing doesn't look so good on them. Beto is not getting shit. Beto at the very best will get vice president, but I can't see anybody wanting him as vice president because he's just obnoxious. When all's said and done, I think it's going to be between.
You saw that Spanish speaking too, like Beto. Okay, like so Castro speaking Spanish, but like Beto, it was way so much Spanish. It was crazy.
He's pandering. That's what he does. He panders. So I personally think the real decision is between Biden, Sanders, and Warren, and all the rest are hoping for a vice presidential nod. That's what I think. Or they're all angling for 2024.
Welcome, Erika. You get the honor of being on the same stream as Halsey also. I'm not sure if you two have met. She had Kevin McDonald on this week, and she reached out to me with a lot of questions about Judaism, and we were actually going to stream tonight. And what was that name in Australia? Are you familiar with this case in Australia with
Brendan O'Connell? Can you hear me? Is the sound okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay, great.
Can you hear her, Halsey?
No, so I have to log back out and back in. Hold on one sec.
Okay. I can hear you guys perfectly, so.
Yeah, Halsey might know about that case. Okay. I want to talk about the debates, but so what do you think about the debates? Did you watch any of it or
I did, but I'm going to go ahead and just listen to you guys for a couple minutes, and then I'm going to go ahead and then I'll join right in. I just had to set a few things up in the background here. Sorry. And
okay, I'm back and I can hear her now.
Yeah. I was just telling Doooovid, I'm gonna join in like 2 minutes. I just have to set a couple more things up in the background, but I had to log in here first before I was able to do that.
Okay, cool. You know the Brendan O'Connell case, where the anti-Semitism guy, the guy went to prison for 3 years in Australia.
I don't.
I didn't know about it either, but yeah, we were going to talk about that tonight. And then I was watching Luke and you're talking to Brundle. I was like, let's do a Democratic primary stream. So I told her to, just come on my channel. She's got a small channel, and she's been facing deplatforming. So I invite her on to the stream to talk about the primaries.
So let's talk about that stuff. I'd rather talk about that than the primaries. The primaries, I think, are fucking boring. Let's talk about the fun stuff.
You want to give a quick breakdown of the news story? This Australian anti-Israel or whatever activist that spent 3 years in prison.
Yeah, sure.
She said she needs a couple minutes though, so you want to
just give me 2 minutes. Sorry, guys. I didn't have the option to log in to hear last. I had to do it first.
So go for it. Do that, and then we can talk.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Tomorrow, I think Bernie Sanders is probably going to do pretty well tomorrow. Like Biden, I don't see Biden standing out with 10 people on the platform. Like Sanders, he's like possessed. Like I don't think it's going to make a difference to Sanders that there's 10 people there. Biden, I just don't see him filling the stage. Maybe Mayor Pete. It's possible he'll do well. I would hope Andrew Yang.
Mayor Pete's done. So go for it. Do that.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. Tomorrow, I think Bernie Sanders. Yes, I hope Andrew Yang makes a showing because, when they have the cuts for the second debate, where they're going to need 2% and 125,000, they're trying to cut down the names. I'm hoping that Yang makes that cut. So we'll see tomorrow. If he could have any show on the stage with all those people there.
Well, remember this: Bernie remembers that he didn't go after Hillary hard enough. In the primary, and that's why he thinks he lost. So, but at the same time, they blamed him for weakening Hillary going into the general. So I don't think he's going to be calm with Biden. I don't think he's going to be nice to Biden. I think he's going to go at Biden with everything he has. So that could be interesting to watch a pissed off Bernie Sanders freaking out on a half asleep Joe Biden. I think it just could be fun. Not that I give a shit what either of them have to say.
Yeah, they really got to go at each other. They're kind of like, like if I'm so lucky to be president, or because none of them, you had big names. Like, obviously Jeb Bush, brother of the president. Donald Trump was a really big name. Just he made it interesting. Millions of people tuned in. None of these people are really big names. Even Biden being the VP, like I don't picture millions of people across America being interested to tune in to hear what Biden says, or really any of these people say. So they might have to spice it up by attacking each other. And I was thinking it was already later with they had so many Republican debates, but when Christie, went after Rubio and saying they were knocking each other out because they needed to make their name and get more digits in the polls. So you didn't see really too much of that tonight. And it's like Gabbard was the only one who had a little back and forth with Ryan about Afghanistan. So I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow's like a real dud and just uninteresting and everyone just like, please call on me, please call on me. As where Trump, he was like, I don't need to be called on, like I'm Trump. And he just, kind of like took the microphone from the media, called out the media, as where tonight they were just all sitting there and, it was like, please call on me. And just, I can't see millions of people being interested in this.
So this will probably be Tulsi's last chance to really break out. If she doesn't score big tomorrow night, then she's done.
But she's not there tomorrow night. Tonight was her night.
Oh, I thought she's on tomorrow. If that's the case, she's done. She doesn't have any money. She doesn't have a lot of practical support. And
I showed you the money. She's got $5 million. July 15th, they're going to have the next filing. But she had in the top 10 of money. And I think she's going to get me because she's active. Like I follow her on Facebook. She's been traveling the country like in a bus tour for like months now, multiple places speaking. So personally, obviously, like I'm kind of rooting for her, but I think she's going to make the cut just because she's doing the legwork, and she does have, she has at least $5 million. It could turn out that she's going to have much more when the July 15th filing comes out, and but you might be right.
I think Tulsi is the most palatable Democrat for people like me. She's a commie anyway, but when all said and done, she's definitely the most palatable Democrat for a person like me. I would never vote for a Democrat anyway.
They asked her that gay question, and she was like, okay, she grew up in a socially conservative family. and her position evolved, and then she's like, she would lay down her life for her fellow LGBT troops, and they would lay down her life for her. And I don't even know if any of these are going to be like highlight clips. Like I don't know if tomorrow anyone's going to care to see the highlight clips or that. And if people are watching, I don't know if anyone in the chat thinks that there was anything worthwhile that would like make for a good highlight clip tomorrow.
I'm ready. If I can make a comment about Tulsi, I really wasn't impressed with her, and she seemed very robotic and memorized. And I don't think she's gonna go far at all. I think I have to agree with Halsey on this one that I don't think her chances are very good. Yes, she is more palatable than all of the others, but again, she seemed too rehearsed and non-motive, which
she's also competing with the Democratic committee, hating her guts. They look at her the way that the Republicans look at Ted Cruz. They despise her. So they do not want her winning.
And she probably doesn't understand policy. She just keeps on repeating herself. She's got like, just 2 or 3 issues that she's researched and knows something about. And basically it's like, we got to get out of the wars. We got to get our troops out. And, like obviously Elizabeth Warren, she wrote the book on bankruptcy. She was a Harvard law professor. She understands policy. Cory Booker is an Oxford Rhodes Scholar, lawyer. He understands policy. So she, Medicare for all. And she was basically just saying like, I want this to work. I want everyone to get along, and we'll use the best minds and bring everyone together, and it's going to work out. But yeah, I mean, you're right. She doesn't understand policy. And when she gets pressed on those questions, she's not going to have good answers.
Yeah, and I just think that she did not present herself very well. She was too rehearsed, like I said, not enough emotion. Just kind of, dead stare. So I'm like, she probably isn't going to advance much past this.
No Israel no Israel tonight.
They're going to avoid that one. They're going to avoid that one like a plague.
Well, if they want to save their careers, they will. But
there wasn't really much differentiation like that. Like tonight, like none of the people really. Maybe they stressed something more than the other. But there wasn't really anything to pull out to differentiate the candidates tonight. And I don't know if tomorrow is going to be any difference. Even with Bernie Sanders versus Clinton, it was a huge contrast. But they've pushed the party so far to the left that it would seem that almost all the candidates are going to be closer to Sanders than they would have been to Clinton.
So is Sanders going to be on the panel tomorrow?
Tomorrow, because there were like 23.
So I'm not sure. I don't know who's.
They split it 10 tonight and 10 tomorrow night, just because there were so many. And the Republicans had done it with like a pre-debate. They didn't have as many as the Democrats had last time. This time, but if you remember the Republicans, and they had like the B cast, so they had the debate like before the other debate, and hardly anyone watched that. So this one. And they also divided it up. So instead of putting like the top candidates like Biden, Sanders, they put Warren and Booker.
So Biden will be tomorrow too.
It's going to be Biden, Sanders, Yang. Mayor Pete.
The Yanggang guy.
Yeah, I mean they could have put all the big names together one night, and so instead they seem to try to divide it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something that's actually interesting. The commies that are running on the left pretty much don't interest anybody. I mean, everyone says like, oh, okay, like which commie is going to be more commie than the last commie? Right. So I mean, there's nothing interesting about any of these people.
No, and Sanders had a shot. Sanders had a shot. I mean, he's wasted. I mean, there's no way he'll ever be elected. Ever.
Oh, he might just spoil the whole game for everybody. He might run as a third party. He wouldn't rule it out today.
Right.
Well, you're also going to have to see whether the media is going to try to destroy these people, because as of now, they've been very cordial and professional. They haven't been going after each other, and the media hasn't really been going after them. Like Gabbard's the only one the media has really went after. So it could be in order to weed people out. you'll see over the next few weeks, the medias are going to do like special exposés and try to destroy these people,
Right.
some of them.
Right. I agree. Right. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the next couple months, especially if they escalate the situation in Iran, and then how everybody's going to try to exploit that. And, it should be an interesting election season.
Could be.
Mhm.
I don't think it's going to be very interesting.
No?
I think it's going to be a lot of empty promises, and everyone's going to know
yeah.
their empty promises.
Right.
I mean, I'm so over Trump at this point that
Yeah.
I don't believe there's any alternative. Like, they're both going to just be awful. So
Yeah.
whoever the Democrats nominate is going to be terrible, and Trump is already terrible. So it's just going to be a question of which terrible are we going to get, and they're both going to implement the same policies.
Right.
Well, if we don't get the Israel question tomorrow, like Kamala Harris or something, if they push that off till the next debate, but it could be once the Israel question comes, the sparks will start flying, because in order to differentiate some of the candidates, you might have like Harris or someone just come straight out and say, we should move away from supporting Israel, or if all the candidates are going to be united front, we're going to continue the Israel policy.
What'll be interesting is, and I didn't have time to look this up, but are all
20 candidates
are all of these people backed by AIPAC, I wonder?
No, none of them are.
One of them are back, but I'm saying they're all.
Well, AIPAC doesn't back candidates anyway. But
Well, you know what I mean. Contribute to their.
Yeah, but they're probably all
funds or
Jewish
whatever.
Israel friendly. Any of these candidates that are
no, not at all. Not at all. Sanders isn't. Warren isn't. Booker isn't. Booker is more than others. But what's her name? Kamala Harris isn't. I don't know how Mayor Pete looks, but most of them are pretty anti-Israel because most of them are trying really hard to bring in the actual left who hates Israel. The only thing that they're walking a bit of a tightrope on is they don't want to give up the big Jews' money.
But you're saying that relatively. I'm saying like none of them are like Rashida Tlaib. Cory Booker had been a keynote speaker at AIPAC many times. Bernie Sanders lived on a kibbutz. Kamala Harris is married to a Jew.
Right.
So like when you say that, that's a little hyperbole.
But I'm saying Sanders appointed Cornel West to the Democratic National Committee Policy Committee. I mean, he's openly said that like he believes only in an enforced two-state solution. He said that if he's elected, he'll move the embassy back from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv, which he can't do. But he's an openly anti-Israel candidate, and so is a lot of them are. I mean, Cory Booker, he'll play the game because he needs the money. He's northeast.
Well, right. That's my kind of my point, that they'll whatever they say is is just all lip service, and we have to see what their voting record has been. And I do believe that, especially Sanders, I mean, he votes for the wars. He's pretty involved as far as that's concerned. Like Doooovid was saying, a lot of these people are connected to Israel one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, from Erika's perspective, all of these people are pro-Israel. I mean, from Halsey's perspective, like a lot of them are anti-Israel, but from Erika's perspective, I think she could fairly say they're all pro-Israel.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll rephrase. They're a lot less pro-Israel than the Republicans. So,
right.
So they're going to have to face that backlash in a general election because it will be used against them.
Yeah, I mean, none of them are going to come out and support a BDS.
No, I doubt it.
Candidates.
Well, right, and for our Constitution, that's something that you should support, no matter,
But Gabbard and Harris, they might come out ending giving military aid to Israel. You might have multiple candidates that come out saying that they would end the aid to Israel.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, that might make it interesting.
It's at $10 million a day that we give them, and they want to give more. And I'm like, how much more do you need? It's ridiculous when we have homeless, kids and, people living in the street, families, veterans. I mean, our infrastructure is falling apart, and that they just want to suck all the money and wealth out of our country, and we can't.
Well, that's not really true, but at the same time, I get what you're saying, but that's not really true.
Well, the 10 million a day would really come in handy.
No, it wouldn't, because the 10 million a day doesn't leave the country. It goes right into the hands of the defense contractors of America. of all of the aid, 92% has to be spent on American-made military goods.
Well,
So it never
no,
leaves the country. It stays in the country. It just stays in the hands of the defense
well,
contractors.
there's different bills that you have to add up. That this is like a total of different bills that have passed. So different bills go towards different things, and the aid that we do give them is given yearly, not quarterly, and they can and do take that money and actually invest it and make money in interest.
No, because as I said,
I researched this, and that's what they do with.
but I'm saying the majority of them don't. The 92% of it, as I said, has to go to American defense contractors. The other 8% is used for research and development, and anything that is developed becomes an American patent that goes to an American company and has to be produced by an American company. So it's not that.
But a lot of this is sold to Israel, and then they then sell it to different countries like China. And there's an issue here with our national security and what Israel's behavior is.
Well,
So
there's two times that they've sold something to China. One time was an optical piece, and they weren't. No one was objecting to it being sold to China because it was going to China. They were objecting because they were afraid that China would pass it on to Iran. So it's not that they're giving like military secrets to China on a regular basis. It's been a two-time thing, and both times it was some really minuscule piece of technology that even they say they didn't know was a problem.
That's actually, it's not true, because there is documentation. I have actually gave it to Doooovid earlier today. But again, I don't want to kind of get in there until we're all kind of prepared and we have time to maybe read it over. And I'd love to maybe set something up like a debate where we could talk about all this, because I really do think that this needs to be talked about. And that's why Doooovid and I have kind of set up this series where we talk and debate, and we do it respectfly. And we talk about.
I have no problem with that, but in the end of the day, I'm against giving aid to Israel as well.
Right.
So I don't have. I object. I'll object to the facts in question, because a lot of it is given to nefarious act that has nothing to do with Israel. It has to do with the military-industrial complex of America, which is a bigger problem.
And I'll provide you with the documentation about this, because I have researched it and I do have the bills, and I don't have it handy because I wasn't predicting that we would touch upon this.
Honestly, it's probably.
We all gets back together and we could talk about. I think this stuff needs to be talked about.
In all honesty, I've probably seen it before. It's something that I've probably seen. I'm not objecting to what you're saying, but I'm just it doesn't matter who the beneficiary is. If the money's leaving the United States Treasury and it's going to either American defense contractors, Israeli defense contractors, foreign governments, whatever it may be, that money could be much better spent, or at the very least could be transparently spent. If you're going to give $10 billion to American defense contractors, then you say that. You don't come out and try to make this kind of convoluted method where you give it to Israel, they spend it back on American shit, and then states start passing anti-BDS laws, because that would mean that their insurance and retirement funds can't invest in Raytheon and Boeing and Lockheed Martin anymore. So they allow Israel to take the hits for basically non-transparent spending on a lot of different things. And Israel's happy to do it because they get the beneficiary of it. They get all the American-made military equipment that they want, and they basically get support in the UN, and they get a lot of shit from America. But it's this parasitic relationship that goes both ways that causes both countries to hurt themselves, get involved in a lot of stupid entanglements that they shouldn't get involved in.
Right.
So regardless of what you think of the nefarious nature of it, it doesn't matter, because the end result is the same. It's a bad relationship for both parties.
There is a lot more technology and whatnot being sold on the sly to other countries that are actually our enemies, quote unquote enemies. And but again, I don't have those documents really handy. I did forward the Google Drive link to Doooovid, and maybe he could forward it to you, and we could talk about. But
we got a question from the chat, Erica. Anonymous watcher wants to know how you feel about the money given to Jordan, Egypt, or foreign aid generally. Is it just the amount given to Israel, or you're kind of isolationist and feel that way about U.S. policy everywhere?
Well, I think that we give away way too much. We give way too much money, regardless of who it goes to, especially when we're at crisis points in certain areas here in our own country.
Certain areas, we're bankrupt. We are bankrupt.
Right.
The nation is bankrupt.
primarily infrastructure, homes, things like that. I mean, I could go on. I mean, the list is like this long. Okay, but I was just saying, and like, for example, one of the bills, we pay Jordan and Egypt money not to attack Israel. I mean, that's just like one tiny example of, is that really money? Well, money well spent. No, it's not. And so it's not necessarily, oh, should we give no aid to anybody? No, I'm fine with it as long as we can. Our citizens are taken care of first. But I have a big problem, especially when it comes to children, when they're suffering, but other people are, receiving millions upon millions of dollars every year. I mean, or we should have open borders for people we cannot support. When we can't support our own people, we have no business bringing in more people, especially illegally. You know what I'm saying? So it is such a multi-pronged problem. It's not just one or two issues. It's numerous issues all at the same time. And I think a lot of this information gets conflated and people get off track, and and it's just a big.
So
You have to have a lot of time to really break it all down.
No, you don't have to, because I get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that you're lacking in point. What I'm saying is that, look at it this way. Let's say all foreign aid to all foreign countries, right, was cut tomorrow. Let's say they just took it away and said, sorry, guys, business is closed, trough is empty, no more. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that the politicians in America would close the border? Because I know they wouldn't.
Border?
Yeah, because they're cowards. It makes no difference. The money doesn't matter about the border. It just matters that they're cowards and not going to do it.
Well, then you have to look at the reason or the true motivator for having an open border, and what is the end result and who benefits from that. That's what you have to look at. Okay, well. So if you have your market flooded with available workers and you don't have the work available, then what happens? Your wages get driven down.
Right, but in all honesty, that's not what that has to do with. The open borders has to do with one thing and one thing only, and it has to do with political power. That's the only reason that they.
So explain to me how. How does that work?
Very simply, 2020 is the end of it all, just so you know. Now, Trump is working actually against this, which is something I do give him credit for. Okay, and I don't give Trump credit for much.
When you say end of it all, what does that mean?
2020 is the next census. Okay, the census doesn't record citizens; it records people. Okay, and Trump is trying to add the citizens question. We'll find out from the Supreme Court in the next month or so whether he's allowed to or not. If he's not, you'll see massive political power shift from the middle states to California, New York, all the sanctuary cities where they're housing all these illegals, because they're going to count them all in the census. What they've been doing over the last 10 years is just putting in bodies and bodies and bodies. That's what the whole sanctuary city thing is about. That's what all of it is about, because if they consolidate that power, there won't be any need for elections anymore. Or the right will not be able to win another election, because that's how you allocate electoral college votes. That's how you allocate congressional districts.
Well, the electoral college helps with that, though, so that the coastal states don't dictate policy all the time. But I do see what you mean. It can help those politicians in those states retain their power and control the power. But there's also more benefit to immigration, unlimited immigration coming in.
Well, that's why the libertarians, that's why the people like the Koch brothers and the pretend right wingers, like Ben Shapiro and people like that, they're all about open borders, because my workers, they're doing the jobs Americans don't want bullshit. Okay, like they honestly just believe that keeping wages down is going to help them, so they don't have a problem with Mexicans coming in and picking lettuce and picking strawberries and cleaning beds and shit like that, because to them, like, okay, so that's stopping the unionization of all other workers and actually preventing prosperity.
Well, that's especially in the interest of big corporations as well.
For sure.
Yeah, for business. But I thought Ben Shapiro was pro borders. No,
Mr. Ben, I'm fine with the browning of American Shapiro. Come on.
I thought he was. I thought
no, he just wants the right immigrants.
And well, here's the argument against the commies and against the liberals who are pro open borders. Okay, so you bring in all these people who get paid pennies on the dollar. Okay, that's basically slave labor. So in essence, they're endorsing slave labor, like sweatshop wages.
I would encourage you to
You know,
not in any way make a moral argument against the Democrats and try to say, but they're acting immorally, because they obviously, and the corporations are the same, they don't care.
oh, I know,
They're completely fine with that.
nobody cares. But when I'm saying when they try to make the moral argument, you could throw that back in their face, and it's actually a fact that it is sweat labor, sweat lodge. You know, the bottom of the tier and pennies on the dollar. You know, slave labor. Is that what you're endorsing? Yes or no? But by becoming citizens, they gain their rights. This is why they want to give non-citizens all the rights that we have to make it easy. I mean, it's just insane. Their whole lot. There is no logic to their game except for that all their decisions and what they want just benefits them, regardless of who the collateral damage is. Okay. And you know, they get people all emotional and off track and all this other crap, and it's just like, oh my god, just shut up. You know, just be quiet. But you know, having unlimited immigration, the end result isn't just the political power too. It drives the wages down, and it's
Are you reading the chat, either of you? So I won't bother. I was going to let you guys go at it a little bit, but if people are asking questions directly for Halsey or Erika, I don't know if you're reading the chat.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Randall was, mentioning, is it going to become, kind of like a lesser of two evils thing? No one really went too much at Trump today. Maybe as the election gets closer, you're kind of going to see it like, you got to do anything to prevent Trump from being commander in chief, and the impeachment question, for example.
That's the red herring. That's where they want to try to divert attention off of what the real issues are, like the USMCA, and like their end goal with trying to combine the economies of Canada, United States, and Mexico to compete with Belt and Road that's going on over there.
Yeah, my Patu's at the end, they asked, what's the biggest threat facing America?
Right.
One had mentioned nuclear war. I mean, you want to go through some of the issues and see if you think there's differentiation on the issues, or how left everyone's going to be, like if it's healthcare, if it's immigration, if it's tax reform. If Bernie Sanders, people are going to come, we're going to raise taxes, we're going to repeal that didn't get mentioned. Everyone was basically in favor of like universal health care tonight. I think all of the major candidates seem like they're going to come out in favor of universal health care. I don't know if there's going to be that much differentiation between the Democrats on that issue, and even Trump might get pushed to that. I don't know if you want to go through some of the talking points of the major issues, Halsey.
I don't believe any of them are issues. So I believe we have one issue, and that's it, and that's socialism. Is that what they're trying to bring about is pure socialism at this point.
I'll go a step further and say communism.
So I'm just using them interchangeably.
Free education, higher taxes, universal health care.
Nationalization of banking, commerce, and education in this country is what they're going for 100%. They are looking for 100% authoritarian control.
It's really hardcore communism is what they're like.
And there's no differentiation. Like basically all of them, and probably including Gabbard, who just doesn't know how to implement it. Elizabeth Warren is probably the only one who could actually successfully implement it. Being like the Harvard law dean. Maybe Cory Booker. Bernie Sanders would probably be incompetent. He knew how he blew through $200 million last time to actually implement the socialism he talks about. But it seems universal that they're all pointing in that direction.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and I think they're setting up the United States to not be able to have a competitive edge in the near future, which is a major problem for all of us because we live here. And like, again, I said, like you just listed a whole bunch of things. It's a multi-pronged problem that they've created. And
They could differentiate
the
themselves.
politicians will sit there and will basically admit to all the things that they sell out on, that, probably, in my opinion, get the bribes. So don't talk about this or don't fix that problem. But then when it comes to election time, oh, we've got this problem, we got that problem. Yeah, those are all the issues that you've been paid not to take care of. It's such a hypocritical.
They could differentiate themselves in terms of globalism versus isolationism. I mean, they're all basically socialist, but some of them might be isolationist socialists versus other of them that are globalists.
Right.
I mean, do you see that on the board, Halsey?
Yeah, a lot of them. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know, Halsey, you see like an internal democratic debate of the direction of globalism versus isolationism?
I think that all of it is a red herring anyway. The only reason they talk about globalization is because they want to be on the same par with Europe. They just want to join with Europe at this big revolt against climate change and against free speech and against the actual rules that the Constitution guarantees, because they could say, oh, international treaties take precedent and stuff like that. But the immigration issue is the biggest one that we have, only because the right tends to cuck on almost everything. So the right will allow all of these millions of people to flood into the country. They'll allow an amnesty that allows them to vote or just allows them to vote illegally. And then when all's said and done, they'll sit back and go, well, we lost the election, time to go home, and not care about their demographic replacement, not care about the idea that these people are going to vote in the same shithole policies that they're running from in their own countries. And they're going to drag the country so far to the left that we won't even be able to recognize it anymore. That's why immigration actually matters. But in practice, even if they close the borders tomorrow, we still have a huge problem with the progressive left moving to full-on communism in this country. Right. And it's getting out of control at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that. They're attacking our Constitution and our Bill of Rights directly. And this is something that we all need to really bring awareness to. When you're in Facebook groups, we need to post about it. We need to really get maybe some of these big YouTubers to talk about how, they're pushing through all of these anti-free speech bills. And I mean, I never thought I'd see the day here in America where I'd have to worry about my freedom of speech. I mean, that's what we're known for, is our freedom of speech. And it is under direct threat.
Well, I'm more a policy guy. Like, I could actually read and think out policy, and as opposed to just the generic ideas, to how the sausage is actually made, as they say, how they're going to try to pass the bill, the coalition forming, and then what those bills would actually look like, and like the phase out and grandfathering in and all the the different intricacies of how even if they were to shift to socialism in terms of policy, how that would look. And that's why I said, like, people like Warren or the lawyers might actually know how to do that, as opposed to other people who want to do it. Like even Bernie Sanders, he probably doesn't actually know how to do it, even he just wants to. And I was also thinking that they're all pretty professional and stately, but as some of the weaker candidates start getting weeded out, they might become loose cannons just to try to get themselves bigger name recognition. And probably tomorrow night also, will be no fireworks, but you might see pretty quickly as the next debate comes up that they're going to start seeing like, wow, they have no chance, and try going after each other, try putting some fireworks out there to benefit their chances.
And here's the thing I want to really point out, though, there really is no true left and right. They're all controlled under the same, from the same people.
So if you read Mencius Moldbug, who's a political philosopher, he says the same thing. He says there's an inner party and an outer party, and the only reason that there's an outer party is to make the inner party not seem as if they just control everything.
Right.
It's like when Saddam Hussein would run elections and then get 98% of the vote, so that some people would believe there was actually a competing party.
Right.
I mean, the Republicans and the Democrats are just together at this point to say, like, one socialism light.
And let's not forget, it's a lot of these Republicans that are pushing through these anti-BDS bills, for example. Okay, so I mean, you can't say, "Oh, I'm left." I'm a staunch independent. I've always been independent, and I kind of, I cast a vote or whatever if it even counts. But I make my decisions based on the best person I think is the person best for the job, and I wish more people did that. Way this power illusion for to split people up into separate groups and then subgroups and this and that, and that's how you get to manipulate a population. Group control is you split them up into smaller and smaller groups, because if you have a population that have similar goals and similar concerns and so forth, that group is much harder, depending on the size. Like if you have a country that has commonality and all that, that country, that population is a lot harder to control than, say, maybe like America, where you've got so many different groups who are pushing their own interests as opposed to the common interests, and so on and so forth. And that's how you don't get, these grassroots movements that spring up. They get taken over, and you can't get anywhere.
And Doooovid, what policies do you want to talk about?
It's part of the PSYOP.
Well, probably, I mean, it's probably pretty boring to talk about healthcare, but healthcare is going to be pretty important, like, because the current state of the mess of healthcare, where, Trump kind of just, pulled the plug on Obamacare, and we're basically in a state of mess that healthcare costs are still through the roof, and there's still tens of millions of Americans without insurance, and, there's different approaches. So, obviously the candidates now are more likely to go full single payer healthcare. I would guess probably the majority of the candidates this election are going to favor single party healthcare. I mean, if you agree, I don't know, it's probably pretty boring for us to talk about healthcare, but that's probably a major issue. Taxes is a major issue. The deficit's a major issue. I'm saying that the welfare state, if Andrew Yang comes on and you're saying, like, we could probably have a welfare state, and if it just came at it like America, like Bernie Sanders, like, we're the richest country in the history of the world, we can afford to be a welfare state. And then Yang probably actually has, some of the better thoughts that might be interesting. But it's tough to win elections promising to raise taxes, but you might see that where, people are just going to come out straight and say, we're going to raise taxes. Immigration's a huge issue. And maybe some of the candidates step out and say, yes, we're going to open the borders. Yes, we're going to make it easier to come to America. I don't know if any of the candidates would actually openly say that. You didn't have too many, plans. Maybe some like DACA or amnesty. But if someone's just going to come out and say, yes, we are going to, so to say, brown America. We are going to let the third world come. That's what they're running on. That's their platform. I don't know if any of the candidates, maybe Kamala Harris or,
see, again, we've got this pressure cooker of, millions of people can't afford their insurance, right? They don't qualify for Medicare or Medicaid, and you're bringing in more people who are going to be using up those resources. And not only that, but there are groups who are enabling these, people like from Guatemala and all this stuff to immigrate, and come up here. Why are they doing this? What's the real reason? That's what we kind of have to call out as well.
I don't want to have like a right wing, because we're talking about the Democratic primary. So I don't want to have like an immigration debate that's right now based on what the right wing is thinking.
I guess what my point is that while they talk about, well, how can we resolve this issue? They contribute to the problem by, adding more stress on top of an existing terrible.
Well, they just say they have if the Democrats are going to come straight out and say, we have a different version an idea for America, like we're going to change America, and none of the candidates are coming straight out and saying that in so many words. But it's like as a lot of them realize that they're basically no names, no one knows, they're not getting interviews, no one knows who they are, they're polling at a few percent. Maybe some of them are going to step out and actually start advocating and saying I'm gonna if they become president, they're gonna open up the borders or something like that. I don't know. I don't want to debate that issue, like, because I know I know both Halsey and you are probably largely anti-immigration, so I didn't mean to. I just meant to differentiate the policy possibilities that the Democrats might start proposing, like climate change. They're all
that too, though. I mean, they may say they don't want it, but they don't. What are they doing about it? Nothing. And this is what they all, both Republican and Democrat, and it's going to directly affect, and it is directly affecting our ability to have medical coverage for our fellow citizens. And they'll sit there, like I said, well, we have a major problem here, and what they're doing is they're contributing to the problem and making it 1,000 times worse, so that it's impossible to take care of it. Well, how do you take care of a problem when you keep adding to it? And the thing about these politicians is that when they start throwing in these red herrings about, oh, well, America's built on immigration and blah, 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 and they start going off on all these different directions, nobody brings it back down to the issue. And the issue is that we have to take care of our families and the kids and this and that, but they allow each other to, go off on this tangent and racism and this, and before you know it, you forget what the main point was.
Yeah, unfortunately, like the deficit, the spending, I don't think anyone's going to mention that. Like even Trump is probably, Trump just has a complete pass. Like he doesn't have to balance the budget. None of the Democrats are having any pressure. The Republicans are going to be forced to vote for Trump, whether he balances the budget or not. So, like for me, I'm pretty fiscally conservative. Mm-hmm. It's just a disaster.
Well, and in the wall, that's what he ran on. There is no wall. The bill that he signed gives each county the decision whether or not they want to build a wall or not. So literally you can have 200 miles of wall, and then the next county over says, no, we don't want one. And then you don't have, so there is no wall that's going to be built.
But Trump's going to be in good situation on that, even though he failed on the wall, knowing like, mm-hmm. Like if it's not Trump and it's one of these Democrats, immigration is going to be so much more. And, they're probably going to do amnesty and all these different things. So I think Trump's not going to have to worry that much about his failure on the wall, because it's going to become to a lesser of two evils. And saying, what are you and Halsey? We're all right-leaning people. What are you going to do when it comes down to election? And, you're going to hold Trump to the fact that he didn't build the wall when if you don't support him, it's going to be so much worse.
Well, that's just like one issue that they screwed around with, and they pretend that they dealt with, but they didn't, and it's just we all, unfortunately, for all of us, the reality is that we have to dig through all this mud that, they muddy up the waters, and we have to sift through all the bullshit to finally get to the truth and what is really going on. And I think that's why people come to our, YouTube channels, because a lot of people don't have the time and things like that. So when I address issues like this, I like to get the actual bill and talk about it. And I provide my sources so that the people who do watch my channel, they could take those links and they can share it. But that's one example of how they do every single issue.
I think this election is basically going to be about socialism versus capitalism. So all the different issues, immigration and isolationism and foreign wars, although they're going to be discussed, I think it doesn't matter who the Democratic candidate is going to be. It's just basically going to be an election over, do we want America to move towards socialism, or do we want it to, to stay capitalistic?
Right. One of my people are commenting that Trump already did amnesty. I'm not 100%. I don't recall seeing a bill about it or not.
He didn't.
He did not.
No.
Okay. I'll just.
He signed one of the worst immigration bills that's ever come up in the country, but he didn't give amnesty yet. He just gave a de facto amnesty, because what he did was he basically said, if you're expecting an unaccompanied minor, or if you potentially could be expecting an unaccompanied minor, then you can't be kicked out.
Well,
so
you've got then a huge child trafficking is going through the roof. A lot of these kids are not related to the adults that are coming through. And that's another huge issue. Child trafficking, child sex trafficking. I mean, I could go on and on and on about why we should not have these open borders. And it's not even a moral issue. I mean, it is, but I'm just saying, just factually.
What do you think about the streaming? I mean, both Erika and Halsey, Halsey streams constantly, like every day. Erika, you might stream a few times a week. Do you think it's going to be interesting, or relatively, like, even the debates, this stream is even kind of boring? There's nothing really to talk about. And coming up over the next few months, all this Democratic infighting is in fact going to be uninteresting. The media is not going to be able to make it interesting. And even if we're streaming all the time, it's not, we're not even going to have anything interesting to talk about.
So, I mean, let me give you some numbers. Okay.
Sure.
$183 trillion. That's the unfunded mandates of Social Security and Medicare over the next 20 years. That's how much money we owe to beneficiaries and the trust fund in order to keep them at current levels over the next 10 years. $19.3 trillion. That's the next one. That's the entire gross domestic product of the United States of America. So if every dollar that we produced over the next 10 years went into Social Security and Medicare, it would just meet current obligations. That's not including state debt. That's not including federal debt. That's not including debt held by the public.
Right.
So we're dealing with a position here right now where America is, as I said, effectively bankrupt.
Yeah.
So
you are correct. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the idea that we could enforce Medicare for all, even if we raise taxes by 50% on every human being in the country, it wouldn't even be close to enough to cover the amount of money that it would cost to implement Medicare for all. And the Democrats are the most interesting about this, because they love using this example. This is my grandma. She has leukemia. It's not covered by Medicare, or the copay is $8 zillion. She's going to die without proper care. Hashtag Medicare for all.
Yeah, that's what they want.
Right. But she's already got Medicare. And they're saying she can't get the healthcare treatment that she needs.
Right.
And they want to give that same shitty care to everybody else at a cost that can't possibly ever be paid for.
Right.
So, I mean, right there, you have an issue when you have the entire Democratic field talking about the fact that we need to give health care to everybody as a right and raise taxes for it. But at the same time, we can't afford what we're doing right now. Right. And if they try to go further, they will bankrupt the country even further. They're just going to create a mandate that will never be fulfilled.
Well, right. And that's what they're doing, is running on empty promises. There's nothing new and nothing different, which is not acceptable. And fortunately, doggies are barking in the background. Hang on a second.
Yeah, I mean, that's not, unfortunately, that's what I was mentioning. That's not even in the realm of the current debate of, the deficit, because Trump has been given a pass for running up the deficit and, just blowing through money and not following through on any of that stuff. So if if the Democrats don't mention it and the Republicans could get away with not mentioning it, they're probably just going to keep on spending. I don't know. You might have a few senators, a few Republican candidates that will, be fiscal conservatives running on balancing the budget, but I don't hear any of that from large, major candidates. So we got Gandalf joining. Did you want to do a quick show those charts real quick, Gandalf?
Yeah, actually, I don't know how to post them up. I just sent them to you in Messenger because I thought they were excellent. I think 2 or 3 of them were from the St. Louis Fed. I don't know how to show them on here.
And off here.
Yeah, I'll screen share it. I'll screen share it.
Is screen
Oh,
share?
I can't hear him. I have to log out and back in. Hold on.
Oh, sorry,
Okay.
Halsey.
Yeah, sometimes people have the issue where a new person comes to the chat and then they lose. They can't hear the other person.
Welcome, Gandalf.
Yeah, welcome. Yeah, I do weekend review with Doooovid, and Doovid's giving me some wise
seen you around.
counsel.
I've seen you around.
Yeah.
Okay, so you gave me 3 charts. So what's this
Yeah.
one?
So this is it looks at the first one is from 538, source of federal. It's Nate Silver's thing, and it looks at output is going up, jobs are flat. Okay, there's been no real recovery since the so-called Great Recession. I consider it an ongoing depression because I live out in the Midwest and things are just basically shitty. It's bad for people out here. It's not, the economy isn't performing. I don't see people's lives getting better. Something like there was another study that was in Axios a couple weeks ago showing that 85% of jobs are basically gig jobs. That's just not getting it done. You can't raise a family on a gig job. You need a job that's going to be same hours every day, steady work. That check needs to come in every 2 weeks. You can't do anything else. When you got kids to feed, the market's gyrating. No, your kids' bellies need to be fed, and the economy's not doing it. The next chart I gave Doovid was it just looks at the other trends in the GDP, profits, investments, and the employment to population ratio. Guess what? Look at all the other factors of the economy are going up. The one part which is not delivering returns anymore, and by the way, I've seen numbers for later than 2011, 2012, it's still going down. So the trends are the other factor, the share of wealth from the other factors of production, so like technology, land, capital, keep going up. The share from labor keeps going down. So what are we going to do when that happens? Are we just going to keep the borders open? Are we going to pass minimum wage laws? Or are we going to go my route, which is universal basic income?
Yeah, people watching aren't familiar with Gandalf. He's actually connected with some people, loosely connected with Yanggang. And the point would be that employment keeps going down, wealth keeps going down, but productivity is high. Therefore, you could possibly turn the U.S. into a welfare state, so to say, or universal basic income, and saying that yes, we could actually successfully. That we're calling socialism to some extent, but it's saying that yes, socialism might work here in America. I mean, would you agree that's basically what you're saying?
I would dispute that only insofar as universal basic income is not only something socialists have promoted. I mean, you had Richard Nixon and Milton Friedman have promoted it, Thomas Paine. Yes, he was on the left for his time.
Really clearly, like output, productivity versus employment. So he's saying employment keeps on going down. We don't need so many people working to pump out the goods for society to live on, and maybe a different stream. Like I did my stream on UBI, but people are saying that yes, practically socialism might work, and from the candidates right now, they might have Yang is actually a superior candidate to argue and say, yes, I do want to turn America into a socialist society. Yes, I do think it could work. And the mainstream candidates that aren't willing to openly say that, and if Elizabeth Warren comes out and is like, yes, I am a socialist, would that make a difference? Would that make her more interesting, or would that end her campaign?
Well, it's important to note, and see, this is going to lead into tomorrow's debate too, because the clown car's got 10 more. I mean, Yang calls his platform human-centered capitalism. He does not call it socialism. I mean, he talks repeatedly how he still values entrepreneurship and whatnot, but because money is increasingly divorced from work, I mean, what are we supposed to do? Make people drive Uber for 60 hours a week and hopefully make more than, $2 a ride? I mean, we're getting to the point where things are getting a little bit insane with the gig economy not being able to provide enough money for people. I mean, one of the big problems is you have a huge number of men in their 30s. I mean, a lot of stereotypical people just think about it as white or Asian men, but it's increasingly, I'm finding it with Black and Latino men, of men going their own way. They can't find jobs. They don't even want to have sex with women anymore because there's no hope for them to have a family. So it's basically, let's play porn. Let's live in our parents' basement. Let's play video games. Let's drop out of society because I don't want to drive Uber or work security for the rest of my life. You know, we're in a bad, bad way. I mean, and the jobs are not coming back. I mean, you can go through the business pages practically every day now, and they'll pretty much talk about how a third of the economy is going to disappear in terms of jobs by 2030. And so what are you going to do? Have 30% more unemployment? Societies fall apart when that happens and people start butchering each other in the street.
Yeah, I mean,
That's always what happens.
You're the new wave instead of like the Democratic candidates who are like promising handouts in order to win elections, where the people are actually proposing and they're not scared to publicly admit, yes, I want to transfer America to a socialist society.
Can I ask a question?
I don't want to say that because universal basic income is not necessarily a socialist policy. If you mean the classical definition of socialism is the ownership of the means of production and all the means of exchange is held by like the inner party or the government or whatever. So I just want to make that clear.
Well, we all know that we can only have a certain amount of growth, especially with all the companies that have left to go overseas, and the cost of the carbon emissions, let's use that for an example, to let's say cut down a tree here, drive it over to the coast, put it on the ship goes halfway around the world, docks on that ship and that truck, and that truck goes to the processing plant. It gets processed to be driven over to their ship or onto that ship, and then driven, sailed halfway across the world back here, back on that. All right, so we get the idea of the amount of pollution and carbon, called carbon or gas, whatever, that is used just to do something like that for one little, like for lumber, let's say. And we know that all of the companies, the innovation, all that, most of it has gone overseas, and they have no intention of coming back until all of our wages have dropped to make it competitive with the countries, like China and so forth. So my question is, how is universal income, I could see maybe as a short-term solution to aid in stimulating the economy, but can you explain to me how that is a long-term solution? Or is that...
It's not. That's the problem, is it's not.
Right.
Universal basic income is nothing more than expanding the welfare state. It's not pure communism, but it might as well be, because sooner or later that welfare state is run by people that do want to implement communism. And secondly, if you think people are streaming to our borders now, wait until we start promising them $1,000 a month. So you'll see the attack on the border triple. So the idea of universal basic income, when we have a society that makes more than enough money, that has more than enough jobs, that has more than enough ability to take care of its own, we have natural resources coming out the ass. There's no reason to give up and die and say to the government, hey, I have a great idea. Why don't you give us more money? Because then we can sit on our asses and not do anything. There are practical steps we could do that are going to happen one way or the other. And, there are people in the chat that see me and TFM talk about this stuff all the time. So I don't want to sound like it's just my idea, but I'm just saying there are things that can be done to stop this. But the idea of just giving more gibs to people and thinking that's going to solve the problem is just absolutely ridiculous.
Right. And I agree. And my question is also what, like I said, right now we only have a certain amount of areas that can't leave the United States. Okay, so they're basically like the backbone of our economy. Like maybe nurses and doctors and the local things that you have to have here. Everything else is sent out. So we're only going to grow so much, because there's only so much opportunity. So how do we change things to bring these companies back and invest back here, and bring the work back home rather than giving it to China and so forth.
Well, Trump thought that by lowering taxes, but and it's questionable. Maybe that's working a little bit, but I mean, that was the idea that Trump thought was new trade deals, or the trade imbalances, lowering taxes, and decreasing regulation. And it could be that Trump has had success with that because productivity has increased,
Well,
due to lower taxes and less regulation and renegotiating trade deals.
and here's an issue that I have. When he instituted the tariffs again, it was not effective. Why? Because Israel came in and scooped up the business that the tariffs had put off for us, but made available for them. So we can't have people backdooring us like that, because then nothing's going to work.
Yeah, and that was Trump's also idea, was to have separately negotiated deals with each country, which could have advantages or disadvantages. But I mean, I think the UBI, the further push, if you want to say, what actually is socialism or something, we'll save that debate for a different time. But colloquially, what we're calling the push for socialism, where historically Democrats have avoided that, and it's just increasing the welfare state and promising more handouts, as where this election, people are openly talking about the transformation of America to a different type of society.
Yeah, and I'm not for that at all. But
obviously, you and Halsey, we're the alt-right here. we're the pushback.
I agree with you. Shoot, I was going to say something. Just escaped my mind.
I mean, besides for the JQ, I mean, you and Halsey probably see eye to eye on almost the majority of these issues, besides the JQ.
I'd be more than happy to talk to Halsey about the JQ and his perspective and so on.
But I'm saying, besides that point of the JQ,
Right.
you and Halsey's politics are probably pretty similar.
I would doubt that.
Probably politic-wise?
Probably not.
No, come on now. You don't have to be crabby.
I'm not being crabby. I'm just saying, like.
Well, she's a nurse. He's a businessman.
No, it's not, has nothing to do. The things that I believe need to be done for America are not very mainstream, but I don't really care about that. I mean, I'm pretty right wing, but I mean, the only things that are going to basically save us are to dismantle the welfare state and to create a system in which we don't live in a gynocentric society. Those are the only two things that are going to work.
However, this is where we come into a problem with corporatism. Now what we're experiencing is corporatism, which is a form base of communism, where the 1%, lives nice and fat, and the rest of us are all equally poor and suffering. Okay. So corporatism is basically communism. And we have to make sure that, when you say privatize and not nationalize, well, okay, who's privatizing everything, all these different sectors? It's only a very few people. Okay. And so that's why I believe they're called antitrust laws, but they're not being enforced. And the mom and pop stores are, and that's how we've gotten into this big mess.
Gandalf?
Yeah, sorry about that. Like, I disagree a little bit with both of you. Okay, Halsey, I do favor ending the welfare state, but in a jobless future or a gig job future, you need to have people have universal basic income. It's not a catch-all and be-all, but we cannot have so many labor participation rate this low, this many people dropping out of society, all the while we're increasing immigration numbers at the same time. That's just insane. The welfare state arguments that were made by, all sorts of right-wingers and neoconservatives going back to the 1960s no longer apply in a technologically advanced automating society. It's just, I know, I'm sorry, I forget your name, the lady in the middle. Erika, sorry. I know you, but you're nodding your head. You agree with me. Like, I'm just looking at the numbers and the data. It's like, if we're serious about ending the welfare state, we need to, and you don't want universal basic income, we need hermetically sealed borders and a national federal jobs guarantee. Unless you're willing to propose those two things, we need the universal basic income. It's an absolute must. So I'm just going to put that out there, and I'll let.
The only way that you pay for a universal basic income is through inflation.
Yeah.
It's the only way that you can pay for a universal basic income is through inflation, which is just a
Yeah.
tax on savings.
Right.
So
That would
all you're doing is cheapening the value of money and causing the government to print more of it, which just creates a house of cards, which comes crashing down, just like the mortgage market, just like the college loans, just like small businesses are going to be. What I'm saying is that there's more than enough wealth generated in this country to take care of everybody that's out there. And all that's required is that we take care of gynocentrism, we reinstitute things that encourage a bigger birth rate, and we stop with the welfare state.
But
And
if
all
you
of a sudden, if you stop with the welfare state, the immigrants will leave. And you know why I know they'll leave? Because they're doing it. That's what Norway did, and they're leaving. And the same thing happened with us when we stopped giving away Gibbs when Obamacare didn't qualify for illegals, when all of this stuff started happening where they couldn't apply for welfare benefits, immigration went down, and it didn't even require higher enforcement. When all was said and done, you decrease the amount of money flowing out of the government into the population's hands, and the immigrants will take care of themselves because they will leave. They're not going to want to starve here as opposed to starving where they speak the language.
Well, Hals, I think what we're saying is that these benefits should be available to the citizens and not immigrants. That
never happens. It never happens. Every single time you institute a new government priority and you say this is not going to apply to illegals, it only takes 5 years and then it applies to illegals.
Well,
then enforce the border.
Well, right, and that's a separate issue. Okay, that is a separate issue.
Bro, you don't want to get me started on the border. I mean, I guarantee you that I'm 10,000 times worse on the border than you guys are. So,
for children, you're not going to. And our citizens, it's harder for our citizens to get state-sponsored help than, and much easier for illegal immigrants to get the help. So if you take all, like I was saying earlier in the conversation, if we had all this money available to our citizens first, which it should be, I think we would see an increase in birth rates. We would see an increase in spending, and that would help the economy. We have to get rid of the Fed for sure. I mean, they charge us interest just to print their damn money, and it's a private fucking bank. Excuse my French, but you know that it should not even be in existence. That's a huge part of the problem, and corporatism is a huge part of the problem.
what I'm saying is that this is always what the arguments boil down to, and this is why the right and left are really no different in this country, because everybody is just arguing about who should be the recipient of the Gibbs. It doesn't matter, like some say the illegal immigrants, some say non-illegal immigrants, some say we should get all the money, they should get all the money. How about nobody gets all the money? How about we don't empower the government to take all of the wealth of other people and give it to other people that haven't earned it as well? The more you incentivize laziness, the more you're going to get is laziness. And that's what happens in all of the commie countries, even though I understand UBI doesn't seize the means of production, but it will. Because as soon as you have a check that has to be paid every single month, there are only three ways you could get it. Force, you can tax, or you can print money. Or you could borrow it, to tell you the truth. But people are going to stop giving us money just because we want to give more away. And there's only so much you can take by force. As I said, 19 trillion is the entire GDP of America. You think it's going to go up when you start giving people free money? It won't. It's going to go down. And you know what? I agree. Corporatism is definitely a huge problem. And there are ways that it can be dealt with, including antitrust laws that are already on the books.
Right.
But the idea that we are just going to gather up all the money and decide who gets the Gibbs, that's putting everybody on the same page with the Democrats, because that's all they argue about. The Republicans do too. I mean, because when the Democrats say, "Oh, we want to give it all to people who took out shitty loans," or "We want to give it all to illegal immigrants," then the right says, "Yeah, but we just want to give it all to farmers and the military and everything else." But there's just this giant stream of Gibbs that keep coming out that are never going to be paid for. So, and sooner or later, you have to accept that your party won't be in power anymore. And that those people that are going to come into power are going to do so by promising those Gibbs to more and more people. So you don't get elected by telling people that you're going to make sure that they take responsibility for themselves and they start actually working for a living. You get into power by promising people that they're going to get something that they didn't earn.
Well, so Gandalf, Halsey, Gandalf's your elite. I mean, I'm not going to dox him, but he's your elite, university educated millennial that is pushing UBI.
Okay, and
Yeah, and I would say like another influence of mine is Huey Long. I don't value these billionaires at all. I don't value the elite at all. When there are so many people struggling, I could give a shit about how much money they're making or what's going on. No, the ordinary people are the backbone of the country, not the billionaires. In fact, most of these billionaires that made all the big tech stuff in the 90s, well, a lot of that stuff was done at Bell Labs and private-public partnerships with the military, the government at the beginning. So this idea that billionaires are magic job creators and all this crap you hear from the neoconservative right. I know you haven't. I don't know for sure, but just that the neoconservative right and all these talking points is just ridiculous. I like Huey Long's plan of a universal maximum income, and then we throw the rest back in the hopper for the rest of everybody else. Because the rich do not care about the ordinary people of this country, and I'm sick of it.
So do you really believe that if let's say we just took all the elite, all of them, anyone who's worth more than, let's say, $100 million, okay? Let's say we executed all of them tomorrow, and we just took their gibs and threw it back, took their wealth and threw it back in the pot. Do you really believe there wouldn't be a new set of elites, that there wouldn't be new people that would spring up to take it? I mean, this idea of the betterment of man, that what the regular people want to do is collect all the money and just give it away, is naive at best. I mean, the idea that there won't be an elite ever if we just stop giving a shit about them, or if we confiscate all their wealth, it's not that we're not going to have any of that. It's just that they're going to leave. And you know what? Okay, fine. Fuck them. Let them go. I have no problem with that. I'm just saying that the idea that all of a sudden we're going to be universally equal is silly, because everybody wants different things. Not everybody wants a cell phone and internet connection and a big screen TV. And so how do you all of a sudden start saying, well, we're the backbone of America, we want X, and this one wants X, and what people choose to pursue their happiness are always going to be different. And in every society that's ever tried to implement some level of equality like that, the only way they do it is at the expense of freedom. The two are absolutely mutually exclusive. You can have one or the other, and you'd have to choose.
Okay, hold on just a second. I do not want like everyone to be equal. I want the basics covered for ordinary people. I mean, lots of people, even under an automating society, will still have jobs. They could use that extra money. And to be quite frankly, as technology improves and automation improves, productivity will improve. So the nature of the way we get productivity will just be different. You can have robots doing, much, much more work. And if the robots can work 24/7, so labor and money and work are no longer as tied together. I mean, some people are going to be more enterprising than others. I mean, everyone's going to get the universal basic income. Some are going to do with it more than others. Other people just decide to do porn and drugs and video games their whole life, and that'll be fine. Some people decide to live life like Doooovid and just study all day. Some people decide, hey, I'm going to start a lemonade stand with that money. I mean, you'll see lots of people do lots of different things. My point is, I don't think anybody should be, without a pot to piss on because they don't want to drive Uber or do some stupid well, there'll be no fast food work, but you get my point.
No, I don't get your point, because you just said it yourself. What about the people who take the universal basic income and spend it on porn and drugs?
Then fine, let them do it. That's not our responsibility. They shouldn't starve and die because the robots took their jobs.
But they're going to starve and die anyway because they're spending their money on porn and drugs.
Then let them decide that, rather than the so-called cruelty and vagary of the free market, which doesn't want their labor anyway.
The cruelty and vagary of the free market starving them, or the government starving them, is...
I'm giving them $1,000 a month. I'm not starving them, Halsey.
You're not giving them anything. What I'm saying is you're taking money from other people and giving them their money. You're deciding who is going to be the givers and who are going to be the takers. No. And you're assuming that there's going to be more givers and takers at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, there's not. Most people are fucking losers. Most people are not going to be productive parts of society. Most people are going to be the same welfare leeches that they are right now. It is the way of man. It is the way of life. And the people who are the productive members, how are they going to make sure that their kids become the productive members? There's no universality to income that is going to benefit anybody. Universality to income means if you give everybody $5, that $5 is worthless because you're starting everybody at the same baseline. If there's only so much milk, you can only buy so much with $5. So you're talking about rampant runaway inflation, which will just make the $1,000 you gave everybody worthless.
You're ignoring the fact that robots are going to be far more productive than people. You're going to need.
And who creates the robots? Who maintains them? Who makes sure that we invent new, better robots? Where are the universities that people learn that stuff? And if you're saying people are just going to learn it because they feel like it, that it's just not going to happen.
You're going to have some people who are going to want to do it anyway. You're not going to need many of them. That's the point.
But what are they going to do it for? Are they just going to be poor like everybody else, and they're just going to do it for the fun?
It's going to take high IQ people to fix most of the robots. You're going to only have 5 to 10% of the population that will be able to do that work anyway, and it'll be extremely lucrative. You're not going to avoid a society.
You just said that you don't believe anybody should have a maximum amount of income.
Exactly.
So why is someone going to all of a sudden get
So you don't think someone would be happy with, say, under $1 billion a year if someone's?
No, I think that somebody, once they get that $1 billion or whatever that maximum is, I don't think they're going to continue working. I don't think that person's going to go, well, I'm not getting paid anymore, but you know what? I'm still going to go out and do all of this shit.
Yeah. The fixing. No, because I don't want that much money in private hands to then be thrown back into the government to buy off politicians in the system. There are other interests you have to take in mind. So if someone's unhappy with 999 million, such they no longer want to work once they hit the 1 billion, and that's going to be taxed 100% or whatever, then, they're just greedy worshipers of mammon anyway, and not people that, are going to be able to build a cooperative economy. I mean, I just look at this thing very differently. I mean, I want a Huey Long. I mean, Andrew Yang is my number one choice right now, but I want a Huey Long. I want a chicken in every pot. I want poor people to be okay. I want things to work. And, your model is not going to get it done. And it's based on outdated understandings of the way economics works, because you discount how much technology really has surpassed labor and productivity.
I look at the fact that capitalism has produced the most amount of non-poor people in the world. It has done it over and over and over again. Socialism and giving away money to people has failed every single place it's ever been tried. It's led to mass death and mass starvation the minute somebody says, I don't like this system. So yes, I'm looking at evidence as opposed to how I feel about things. And then when you look at the actual evidence of what happens in societies when you give away tons of shit and take it from other people, it leads to mass starvation and death, and has universally, there's your universal basic income, everywhere it's been tried. But for some reason, capitalism means that every poor person that you claim is starving to death has an air conditioner, a cell phone, and a car. For some reason, our poor are better off than 99.9% of the world. But yet, for some reason, everywhere else where they give away everything for free, everybody's starving to death.
Yeah. Halsey, we're like comparing apples and oranges. I hate comparing one society to another. It's a different cultural and political histories, different economic and political configurations. I just reject this notion of comparison. We need to just address this society, its current suite of problems, and where things are right now. Most people need a little bit of a boost in income, even if they're productive or even if they're not productive, because the economy will not provide it if the more and more productivity is heading toward technology and AI. We need to think outside the box now, and using the old solution just isn't going to work, Halsey. I mean, I'm very firm on this right now, actually, believe it or not. And Doooovid knows because we've talked about this. But no, universal basic income, probably universal maximum income, and no more billionaires and no more people starving in the streets if they don't want to do drugs or video games or porn their whole life.
Yeah, but none of the Democratic candidates are actually expressing what you're saying, except for possibly Yang. So that's to promote, push Yang up, and I mean that's why I'm interested tomorrow to see if he gets any of these talking points in, or if the media will promote him or they'll try to destroy him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I hope Yang's best chance is just to focus on the money, get everyone thinking about $1,000 a month. Because one of the things that, you can't believe any of these stupid jokers on the stage. I mean,
he's not going to have enough power to win an election promising handouts. You know, I mean, that's not enough. You know, saying like Booker or Warren or Biden, like adding the promise of handouts to something that's already close. But I mean, just promising handouts, you know, he's got a, you know, paradigm shift, you know, have a platform to express a new vision for America. You know, I doubt his background is going to allow him to, you know, use politics to build a coalition to get to victory.
Yeah. What's I gonna say? You know, Yang is just—he's gonna be like Bernie or Ron Paul or one of these other candidates in recent cycles. He's just not. He doesn't have an inside game to defeat the DNC or the billionaire donor classes or all these other lobbies at the top of the Democratic Party that really kind of pick and drive, you know, the media coverage and the narratives that get people to vote for different candidates. Because most people are just NPCs and just, you know, do whatever the narrative say.
If he makes it through to the primaries and could get a few percent in the few primaries, you know, he could push the Overton window to the left. But I mean, he's got to make it to the second debate. He's got to get his voice out there, get some of these talking points, get more media, and he's got to make it through Iowa, you know, to get at least in like the high percents, single digits in a few states to shift the Overton window. You know, otherwise it's going to be a few guys like you know, they're going to have to wait till 24 to hear anything about this again.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps. I mean, I don't necessarily see him surviving Iowa. I think you're going to have Biden is somehow going to win something because they're going to just fake the totals like they did with Hillary, probably. They'll rig the straw polls again. I'm pretty sure they did that in 2016. And they're going to have someone like some dark horse who will not be Yang. And then it's someone like, you know, Cory Booker or Elizabeth Warren, Beto O'Rourke, or Kamala Harris, someone who's a senator who's got all these other connections. I mean, the big money will want to go with a former vice president and a former senator and won't want some upstart tech entrepreneur who hasn't gotten much from them. And that's not the way this country works.
It's going to come to a lesser of evils. As it gets closer to the election, probably none of these people are going to be able to articulate a clear vision for, you know, how they're going to transform America. So it's going to move into just this lesser of evils, or who's the candidate that has a chance to beat Trump. And that would be my prediction, how the election is going to move forward. I mean, it's saying if you're an idea person and you want to transform America, and you're saying which person is going to be able to take the stand and get a vision and get people behind them for a new America, I don't see any of these people doing that.
Yeah, I don't see any of them doing that either, Doooovid. I mean, it's just, yeah, the political system in America is in a very bad way. Things just are not functioning here. I mean, it's losing legitimacy over and over. And the rich, you know, live in Versailles-type palaces. I mean, they live behind gated communities. They know nothing about the rest of the country. They don't give a shit what happens. I mean, it's...
Oh, I think I mentioned to Halsey a few times, like, yeah. I'm for moving to some form of direct democracy as opposed to representational democracy or something. Like, I mean, to me, the system's just broken. It's just a question of when it cracks, as opposed to, you know, there's no way through the electoral process we're going to be able to fix this system.
Yeah, I'd be for something like that. If there's some way to get like internet voting on specific bills or issues, you know, that could be a way to do it. I mean, I don't know how you get that system secure. I mean, Congress, so for all the Spurgs who are, you know, the Jews run everything. You know, Congress was corrupt in the late 19th century when there are hardly any Jews here. They were just as criminal then. Congress has been criminal from day one. It's the nature of parliamentary systems, no matter what group you have in there. It's a den of thieves. I mean, there was, I'm forgetting the Mark Twain essay on it, but it said Congress is America's natural criminal class. And it always has been. Congress right now is so criminal, it doesn't even matter. I mean, basically every congressman spends more time dialing for dollars than they do writing legislation. I mean, I briefly lived in New York for a while. I had some experience seeing what went on behind the scenes at Capitol Hill because I saw my congressman at work, and their only work was dialing for dollars. They weren't sitting down hammering out legislation. No one does that in Congress. People do it's prefab bills for whatever their donors want. I mean, it's just basically whoredom. It's not really legislation and public policy. I mean, the quality of the average person in Congress is far lower than it's ever been. I mean, you don't have people like Jacob Javits or Frank Church or Paul Sarbanes. I mean, you used to have people who were somewhat statesmanlike. I mean, they wouldn't always just listen only to what donors say. I mean, they would think about the country and try and solve problems. I mean, that we don't have a Jacob Javits or a Frank Church right now is, you know, because those are two senators from maybe 30, 40 years ago I would have liked, is a sign of how bad it is.
Well, we need to get back to what our country was based on, public, and where the law works for the citizen. And they changed that with a law. I can't remember the name of it. It was in the late 1800s, which basically turned our country into a corporation, and that's how they were able to financially use and abuse our system. And we need to get back to the original outline and laws that were put through the country. And a lot of these problems will just go away. But see, we're in a world, no matter where you are, that they don't want problems solved, because if that happens, then nobody makes money. All right. You know, and this is all centered around, you know, the few, 13 families that control, you know, basically all the financial systems in all the countries. And, you know, which was a high gear in the late 1800s. So, and again, you know, we have to bring back labor jobs. I mean, back in the 70s, you could literally quit one job, walk down the street and get another the same day. We don't have that anymore. And that's been long gone. And it's going to be stunted, and it's actually going to go down. But that's the plan. That's what they want for this country. And we need to keep bringing that out and pointing that out to people and forcing them to address this issue.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that you're not going to be able to return the country to what it was. It's, you know, the country's already been transformed, and I mean, you could have visions like that, or isolationist, or balkanization. But I mean, no, I mean, we're already a global empire, and the global corporations and the global supply chain that. I mean, unfortunately, they're probably going to lead to a collapse of society, and God forbid,
Right.
things versus, you know, the minds coming together and a transformation leading to a new America or a new global order. But I think it'd be impractical to return America to what we originally were, and everything, you know, being all right.
I don't think. No, I don't. I don't think it is impossible. The reason why it looks like, I mean, let's think about, in less than 100 years, they were able to completely change the entire structure of how things are run. Okay, and this can be reversed with the proper things that are put into place, like the laws and undoing of certain things, like the corporation law that I was just mentioned. And that would bring these jobs back into America, and we could start, you know, exporting a lot more and making money that way. But they don't want that. This one world government, it's a communist government. And I've been following a lot of this stuff closely, and that's exactly what they're doing here. They're trying to force this change in, you know, in our government to be communist, and we don't want that, because that's going to screw everybody. And we're being no chance of advancement. And what people confuse is equal opportunity versus equal outcome. You cannot have equal outcome, because the variables are so different in each situation. But as long as you have the opportunity for our equal opportunity, that will enable the innovation, that will drive the private sector, as long as you enforce the antitrust laws and get rid of these corporations and these monopolies and so forth. It really isn't that difficult. It's just a matter of reversing the right things and instituting other ones.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean that's where the change in manufacturing and production, like when you mentioned the 70s, where you could just get a new job in the next day, because the economy has been transformed and technology, industrialization has changed, that the economy has been permanently shifted.
Technology is going over to Israel. We're going to lose that too. We're losing that. We're in the process of losing that to a foreign country. I don't give a shit if they're allied or not.
But you can't regain it by turning the clock back on technology. I mean, there's no way to turn the clock back on technology.
The technology sector is moving over to Israel as we speak, and they're taking over the technology sector, and we won't even have that as an edge. Think about this. I mean, this is really, really dangerous. Where we're headed is very dangerous.
But it's just natural competition. And saying if other countries outcompete us and move in a way that we can't catch up, and that's natural order of
competition. It's not. It just
it's not. I mean, a country has to be able to defend, even to whether it's to more allied countries or more like Israel or whatever, or more rivalrous countries like China. Mm-hmm. I mean, Henry Kissinger had said there's no such thing as permanent alliances, only permanent interests, and your friends will screw you even worse than your enemies in the end. That's the nature of global politics. You must defend the outflow of capital and technology. We don't have a government that cares about its citizenry. That's our number one problem, which is why we talk about equal opportunity versus equal outcomes. Well, the one outcome I don't want, if you're not someone who's addicted to porn or drugs and being a total degenerate or criminal, I don't want you out in the street. Universal basic income. It's a cost we have to pay because we're not going to have steady employment for large parts of the population maybe ever again.
That's the problem, not the symptom.
Exactly. I mean, all we would think of the welfare state and the welfarism is the problem. No, we're in a post-labor economy. People like Jeremy Rifkin wrote a book about this that I had sent to Doooovid, maybe in the early 90s. He wrote about the 94, 95. I mean, some people were thinking about this problem way ahead of time.
Right.
I mean, you should look at those people. People were seeing digital technology.
Yeah. Coming. But this is not a result of we're in the position because of the corporate dollar. They're oh god, what is the word? They're
petrodollar.
They're but not benefit, but profits. This is driven by profit. Okay.
Yes.
So, right, and there is no competition for these monopolies, right? So then what happens? They get to dictate how much money, where the product's made, and all this other shit, right? And we're gonna get screwed even more so now. I mean, we're gonna lose the tech sector. How are people gonna and their families? And that's we have all of our politicians are in the pockets of foreign interests, just like you had said. What was it, Kissinger? Similar interests. That's who's going to make it, right? And that's exactly what we're seeing. It's that if we address that problem rather than the symptom, it'll take care of everything else. Everything else will fall into place. I mean, you have to have some kind of safety net, a social safety net for people. Okay. I was a teen mom. I was a high school dropout, and I used public aid for a while when I was going through college. Okay. And I graduated in 3.5 years. I got my degree, went into nursing school, graduated in 3.5 years, and have been giving back. Now, you're going to have people who abuse the system in this. I mean, fair was set up originally for. I mean, it was set up for people who, were disadvantaged but wanted to have an opportunity to go to school and things like that. And there are a lot of people who do that myself being one of them. Okay, but social programs are necessary to a degree. So I'm not for no social help at all, but I'm not for too much either. I mean, you have to have, careful balance.
Agreed.
So
yeah, I actually agree with you. I mean, it's just like we cannot use, the moral condemnations or anywhere of the kind of ideological configuration that I know Halsey's got some disagreements with it, but he comes out of the Daniel Patrick Moynihan, Nathan Glazer, Heritage Foundation, all these neoconservatives that were talking for years about the welfare state and all these lazy, single moms and all this stuff. You've heard these talking points and memes forever. No, that's not what's going on in the economy anymore. And if we're going to make policy based off of that way of thinking about things, we just got stuff wrong. I agree with some of the criticisms of the welfare state. One of the biggest problems is that it's means tested. So let's say I'm someone who gets my $800 a month from TANF, okay? And maybe I get a little bit of WIC or Medicaid, okay? So if I go and get a job that's going to make me $24,000 a year, and I'm going to lose all that aid once I go over whatever the threshold is in a state, I'm screwed. Why would I get a job? Lost version.
I agree with you. Right. Or
you do universal basic income.
Or, well, you could, or families, people who are married, they don't qualify for the majority of things. So then you end design. Okay, you end up with a society where you've got single parents, you don't have a nuclear family and intact anymore, because it's all financially driven that way. Okay, so that's a major problem. Now, if most people who are on financial or public aid or whatnot, they live at poverty level. Okay, and think about it. If you have a job that makes $50,000 gross, take 33 or 32%, whatever the tax bracket is for that, for a single person, head of household, and what is it, 1,000 right off the top for that, right? So 33%, 50 or whatever. I'm just pulling numbers or whatever, but I think it's 33% of 50,000. What do you have left? Then you minus your car payment, food, and just basics to get by, and you're living with you don't have any money. Yeah. I mean, it's really, really screwy, and it's backwards, but it's by design because they want this system to collapse in on itself. The baby boomers, because there's so many of them, they're going to wreck the economy because they're all going to be retired. Then they're all on Medicaid. Who's going to pay for this? There isn't enough jobs out there anymore because and then we're going to lose the tech sector, right? So what now? What? I mean, I hate
a tech center in Israel and China.
Years down the road, it's not that far off. Not that far off. Mm-hmm.
I think you're completely right. See, I'll be honest. I mean, you and I are thinking correctly about where the economy is going. No, the sad thing is I agree with the political right about, they're concerned with everything from the border to sexual degeneracy and family and culture. I get it, and I'm kind of with them on all that. And I think actually the collapsing in on the economy helps spread all this degeneracy they hate. But on the end, we have to support people. It's not their fault the system's falling apart. And I don't want to say, well, it's the free market. No, markets are made by rules and people. I mean, Carl Polanyi talks about the market being embedded in the culture in the famous book, The Great Transformation, that was written as sort of an answer to the Mont Pelerin Society and people like Friedrich Hayek, who wrote the Road to Serfdom. People should read Carl Polanyi. Markets are not free, just existing and floating out there as magical things that determine wages. No. If I'm going to disallow unions and open up the borders, what do you think is going to happen? Supply and demand. Those wages are going to go down, or black markets are going to form.
That's right. And that's exactly what's happening right now. That's exactly, and they want to make this a welfare state, driving wages down. Then we're going to see the companies coming back when they're paying the rest of us, everyone, pennies. I mean, you know, it's ridiculous.
It's unacceptable. See, I'm someone. I am not. See, this is part of, you know, I'm an old. My politics on economics has always been on the left. When I was young, because I grew up in the Midwest watching the factories close and the casinos and the malls move in.
I'm in Chicago, so I'm in the Midwest too. My dad.
I'm in Chicago too, by the way.
Oh, cool. All right. My
So-
dad was a blue collar worker. He was a printer and then a truck driver. I come from blue collar background. Mm-hmm.
I come from slightly higher than blue collar background, like very low middle class, but like I've lived with all those kind of people. I've seen them suffer and I've had it. Like I'm at the point where I'm not going to tolerate it anymore. And I don't care about the billionaire class now. Like they have to start paying. I do not care if, you know, I mean, pretty much in the tech center outside of Elon Musk, Eric Weinstein, and Peter Thiel, because they're at least brilliant and they care about the future of society because they talk about the important issues. Like they'll talk about these issues. Mm-hmm. Everybody else, I just want them taxed at 100%, give it to somebody else and give it to me and all the other poor people who need that money to survive.
Here's the thing, you know, if you dismantle the corporatism, then the market will work properly. What we see now is not a free market. It's not free market.
Well,
so-called private sectors, that's not really truly private sectors. These are corporations, aka the 1%, 13 families, you know, that control the entire planet. Okay, that's basically what it is. The bankers and all that shit. Very limited few who are so-called private sector people. That needs to be dismantled, and then we will see the innovation and private sector, you know, take off. And if you have some of your economy based on land and export, that helps. That's kind of your security blanket. Also, you know, because that gives you, you know, for example, like the hospitals and nurses and this and that. All right. You've got the companies that have to stay here. You very few maybe go overseas, but everybody stays here, and you have an abundance of jobs. You're going to see security. You're going to see birth rates go up. I mean, it's going to take care of so many problems. Just, you know, it kills so many birds with one stone. And it all comes down to this monopoly corporatism stuff and they're not enforcing these antitrust laws. Okay, and this is the result.
Yeah, I agree. But I'm going to push back just slightly on the idea that the free market is there. Markets are rules and communities. You know, they're rooted in culture.
Right. Well,
we have our culture back.
And like I said, antitrust, right? The rules and laws, right? Then you'll see the free market work properly. This is not a free market. This is a corporate market. This is corporatism, communism. Is what we're seeing right now.
Have you ever read G.K. Chesterton?
No. Well, I do have to read more.
You know, I'm forgetting the title of the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's a short book he wrote, I think 1905, 1906. He started this philosophy called distributivism. And the idea was, you know, England was going through the same kind of phase we are now, with just the financiers running everything. I mean, they're outsourcing all of their production to places like India, and Germany was like China is now, you know, doing all the technology and industry. And, you know, there were lots of strikes in England in the early 1900s because they didn't recover from the Depression, kind of like
there was a lot of Bolshevism too. That was a lot of communism.
There was a lot of that rising at the same time. So Chesterton's idea was we need to have a large property owning middle class. Large property owning middle class.
Right.
Yeah, you need to have as many people owning homes and businesses as possible, and the government needs to. I'm forgetting all of the policy innovations he had proposed in that book, and I don't know if many of them are relevant today. But the goal needs to be the same: distributivism. Distribute property to as many people as possible and make them productive. That's more important than having these huge concentrations of capital and large banks and monopolies and all this other stuff. We don't really need it anymore because banks and monopolies and all these other things don't really provide the value they used to when more hierarchical, vertically integrated structures were more important. We live in a more horizontal age because of platforms like the internet.
Did it ever work? When did that model ever work? I from what I can recall, that model of having banks and corporatism has never really worked.
It works for the elite. I mean, nothing ever works for us.
Society, you're always going to have the collapse of a society when you have that kind of, pyramid type thing where, and the controls all at the top, and then we're going to see mass societal collapse all over pretty soon.
Yeah, I'm really worried about it. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm incredible. Okay, I got another friend of mine. I won't say he's another very much like me. I think he's half Jewish. He lives out near Seattle. He talks about to me how scary it is to go on the bus downtown into Seattle. Like he doesn't want to go to work anymore because like every fourth person looks like they're tweaking and on meth or something, and they're just absolutely out of it. I mean, there's the stench is unbelievable. I mean, there's rats and stuff all over the place. I mean, there's homeless people. Yeah. There's needles all over the place. Seattle's almost as bad as San Francisco and everything but the shit, like the actual feces. So you have to clean this up. At some point, someone's got to come in. I don't even care if they just take the tanks and roll them in, roll it over, and push it out. You cannot have it. You have epidemics when this happens. I mean, we don't have enough social order.
There's policemen, I think, in Southern California getting typhus.
What?
Yes, because of
it's getting to the point.
Tent cities and all the unsanitary conditions are getting typhus. Yep.
Yeah, this is now we're getting. Now I'll tell you something else that happened. Okay. Let's say you're any one of us that wants to be healthy. Right. There's an Ebola outbreak in a country. Do we let anyone in from that country until that outbreak is over? Yes or no?
No, of course not.
Well, we're letting in about 500 people from the Congo and putting them all in Portland, Maine.
I know.
I tell you what, that is so irresponsible.
I know.
Maine is one of the 5 poorest states in the union. Maine is poor. Outside of Portland itself, and maybe a few areas like Kennebunkport that are resorts for out-of-staters, most of the people who live in Maine, it's only really Mississippi and West Virginia and a few states like that that are poor, like the Black Belt and Appalachia. Maine is that poor, and we're putting refugees up there when people are no. This is not the dumping ground for everybody in the world. That's not what this country is for. I'm not one of these white nationalists who's for, let's have immigration at 0. No. I mean, immigrants do provide value, but you got to pay your way here. If you're willing to pay your way here, you're willing to go to work, and you can start your own company, fine. I want you here because, this country was never a white nationalist country.
Right. They're bringing grade level skill, okay? They can't contribute to the society.
Yeah, and for that reason, they should be here.
By design, they want to collapse our economy. They want to collapse our society out of chaos. What happens then when they create all this chaos? They get to control the outcome. Okay, that's why they don't want problems solved, because when they create a problem, then they're the ones who control the outcome and what decisions are made. It's complete bullshit, and it pisses me off beyond belief. And you have to be a really sick person to advocate stuff like, you know what I mean? That you're okay with the collapse of society, and it's just ugh.
And what pisses me off with all the refugee and asylum stuff is I want legal immigrants here.
Yeah,
it's bad for them.
I don't care.
Legal immigrants do everything right to come here. And, they follow the law, they get things done. And it's like, we want more of those people. That actually discourages that kind of immigration. It gets us more of the worst kind.
Right.
This is the problem. I mean, they're plenty.
do with race. And you know what? When all else fails, pull out the race card, right?
Hold on a second. My dog threw up right on the carpet below me. So sorry about that.
Sure. You know, when all else fails, pull that race card out, and that will quickly divide everybody up, and everybody goes to their corners, and nothing will get resolved ever. And I'm so sick of that too, because it's such an overused manipulative tool. You know, I mean, it's just. And then, of course, you get nowhere. You get no traction. You know, and again, everybody needs to. Like what is going to impact all of us as citizens? We all need to remember this and stick to that. You know what I mean? So I think you guys are listening, but I know you guys have taken care of drama in the background, and I sympathize because I have that too at times. I had that earlier tonight, but you know, and they throw all these red herrings in, and that's what happens in a multicultural society, is because you have less in common with other people, right? And I'm not saying multiculturalism is necessarily a bad thing. I'm just talking about the challenges that you'll meet within a multicultural society, and that is that you have groups of people with different interests and that are competing for their own interests, or you'll get the government like we have, where they exploit these things, those to pit these groups against each other, okay, and keep everybody busy with all that. And then you also have we have a government who dictates to our politicians where they're going to spend their state budget money, which areas are going to stay poor, which areas won't. Okay. And they do, by design, keep areas poor or minority areas poor. And, you know, then they switch things around and say, oh, well, it's white people. Well, we regular white people don't have any control over where these monies go. Okay. But that's not what you would think if you're watching TV, for Christ's sake. I mean, you see, I mean, all kinds of stuff that's they're projecting upon other people unjustly. So you've got that issue going on. I mean, it is so much deal with. But again, you know, if we all, you know, or maybe a core, you know, group of people, and we could keep our eye on the ball and keep talking about it, will catch on because it makes sense. Why does it make sense? Because it's factual and it's truth, you know? So my one of my people are asking Doooovid if you could give her a grape.
Yeah, I got my Moscato, I got wine grapes, Moscato grapes. I really enjoy those. I like Moscato. The Asti, the Italian wine's very good, but the grapes also. But I mean, I appreciate your social criticism and your points. But I mean, factually, we live in a divided America. So your vision for well, just demographically, I mean, America's fractured, it's divided, and the percentages are big enough that I mean, your vision isn't going to work for vast amounts of Americans.
Well, they exploit and they manipulate these differences within these groups, and they actually create these problems and then project the fault onto others. And that's why we have a fractured country. You know?
You know, you have solutions, like that's why I'm saying we need a transformative solution that could conceivably work for all Americans.
Right. I agree with you. That's why, yeah. And I was just saying, I think you walked away that if we had, you know, a core group of people, you know, I'm saying, you know, as an idea, like how we're all kind of doing here, and we all kind of realize, you know, there are issues that affect all of us equally. And if we, as long as we all keep our eye on the ball and don't get distracted by all these red herrings and whatnot, we can actually maybe start to see things move forward, but this fracturing, that's all by design.
Yeah, I agree. I think the solutions are more likely to emerge from these streams than from the bigger debates. I mean, because you see how pathetic it was tonight.
Yeah,
You mean
you're never going to have discussions like the graphs I sent Doooovid or the commentary you just gave Erika on any of our debates, and that just pisses me off.
I mean, not since Ross Perot. I mean, not since 1992 or 1992, and Ross Perot was the last time you saw that.
Well, I appreciated Ross Perot. I mean, Ross Perot tried to educate the public about how the economy works, what the numbers were, and what the big policies at the federal level needed to be to make sure that you kept the industrial base and maintained the living standards of the working class. Right. I mean, he was a billionaire and a technological entrepreneur, so he saw a little bit of what the future was bringing in, and he did win 20% of the vote. And in contrast to
that's huge for a third party.
And guess what? Half the people that voted Ross Perot were people who were registered Democrats. They were looking for any kind of change because the recession that had happened right after the Gulf War was really deep. And the real estate market crashed pretty severely in 91, 92. People forget this. It was tied to the savings and loans scandal, which is nothing compared to 2008. But
every 10 to 15 years, we have a major crash. So plan accordingly with the stock market.
or don't invest in it at all, because I'm a miser and I don't like gambling with money.
Right. I'm just saying, or like if you're going to buy property, don't buy it at the height of the bubble, that kind of shit.
Yeah.
We're due for crash, so.
We are. I think if it happens before 2020, heaven help us, because the next crash will be unbelievable.
Yeah.
And if we don't get rid of most of the banks and the Federal Reserve on the other side, we'll have civil war.
Well, and I think that then the beginnings of World War III, and we're going to see, because I know that in the southern border, they're planning on having 5 million crossover, and then shortly after that, it's going to be an additional 15 to 20 million.
Then we're done. Texas, they'll be shooting all over Texas. People are going to be pissed off.
And Israel is now in Venezuela. I don't think it's going to happen in Iran. I think it's going to be Venezuela. I really do.
We'll see what's going to happen with Venezuela. I go back and forth on that. I mean, Israeli politics is very fascinating. I just finished reading, or I'm almost finished reading, because I was following the footnotes and asking a few people I know who live in Israel what's going on. The Anshel Pfeffer book, Bibi. I think Netanyahu is being forced out because there's major problems in the deep state, or at least the factions of the Israeli government. And I'm kind of trying to figure out what's really going on there. I think they're deeply divided there too.
Yes, Halsey, are you still there, Halsey?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Did you have any insight on the news, like with Benny Gantz and supposedly Netanyahu's trying to back out of elections? He's scared he's not going to win, and Benny Gantz is trying to force him. Or did you understand that, or any insight on that?
I mean, when Israel's in elections, a lot of what you hear is like here when they're in elections. You just can't trust it. The politics of what's going on behind the scenes are just nuts. Netanyahu's going to win the election. It's just a question of whether he can form a government, and Benny Gantz is not going to win the election. So it doesn't really matter. It's just a question of will they be able to put their political system in order, which I'm not sure that they can at the moment.
Well, can he cancel the election? If Netanyahu could form a coalition, could he change his mind, cancel the election, and form a coalition?
Yeah, if he wanted to.
If he still needs Lieberman, or does he have another path without Lieberman?
I mean, in all honesty, if he could get 61 members of parliament to come together and vote to cancel the election and form a government, I think they could. I don't think there'd be anything stopping them.
Well, Lieberman, has to cave into the Kratom.
Which won't happen. So Lieberman's enjoying this too much. So, I mean, I think he might drive himself into irrelevancy, especially if this goes down to the wire and people are wondering whether their democracy will be able to function. They're not going to just keep going to elections every 4 months for the next couple of years,
But it's such fractured that the Russian-speaking population, are they going to not, stop backing Lieberman?
No, but what's going to happen is you're going to see more and more people backing right-wing parties because they're going to want Netanyahu to form a government, and then Lieberman will make himself irrelevant. He's always going to have a place in parliament because he's got enough of a Russian-speaking audience that's going to vote him in. But the question is whether he'll actually have any power.
You know what's
Well, it corresponds to U.S. elections that as Netanyahu has his elections, you're going to have big stage American Democratic candidates, and what if some of them are openly bashing Netanyahu? Or that won't matter. No one in Israel cares that the major Democratic candidates might be bashing him.
I mean, what could happen is that people are going to hold Lieberman responsible for not, taking full advantage of everything the Trump administration is willing to do for them. And if Trump loses the election to someone like Bernie Sanders or anything like that, then it could actually be a big problem.
And here's the catch-22. I mean, Trump has to both do regime change in Iran and avoid a war with Iran so Hezbollah does not invade Israel. So, I mean, but at the same time, they're going to get everything else. I mean, they got the Golan Heights, which Israel kind of already de facto had anyway. So it's not like really fine, give them the Golan Heights. It doesn't matter to me. And I'm not, unlike a lot of these third world leftists or some of these alt-righters of the Eric Stryker type, I'm not really pro-Palestinian. There's just nothing that can be done about it. I'm a big believer you just give it to Israel and the Palestinians, just accept it or else. That's just my position on it.
Did you watch the Bahrain Conference? Kushner and the Steve Schwartzman and I forget the Tony Blair. I watched everything they showed. It seemed like a no-show. Nothing's going to come of it.
I just heard about it. I have not really watched it. I wonder if Kushner and his people are moving against Netanyahu behind the scenes. It just something seems a little bit off. I mean, I can't put my finger on it yet because it depends. Because Kushner has made all these other deals with MBS in particular, but it seems like all these other Gulf states. So that something else is going on behind the scenes that I don't like. I'm wondering if some people in the Israeli deep state and the Saudi royals and maybe even the Kushners themselves are giving nuclear weapons to Saudi Arabia. That's what I'm what's happening behind the scenes.
Netanyahu and the Kushner family are very close. In fact, Netanyahu used to stay with the Kushners when he was a child. When what's his name? Kushner was a little kid. And Netanyahu used to stay at their family's house.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that.
You were saying Kushner taking advantage of the weakness of Netanyahu right now, that he figures he could kind of force his hand against Netanyahu if he wanted to.
But doing what? Forcing his hand with what exactly?
With whatever direction they think with the compromise with the Palestinians. And so that was the economic vision that Kushner could put Netanyahu in the corner and say, look, you're going to do this whether you want to or not.
Here's the thing. I think that this communist Jewry and Zionist Jewry are theatrics as well. Why? Because we have seen most, if not all, of Israel's leaders are Russian Jews. Okay. And it's becoming, from my perspective, I'm seeing that they behind the scenes have always been friends. This has always been that they were allies, or actually maybe even unsaid, like the same kind of country. They got the same interests, this and that. And I really do believe that this communism and Zionism thing is it's another red herring. Because why, if you're a Zionist country, why would all of your leaders come from a communist Jewish background? You know what I'm saying? That doesn't make sense.
We don't have to get sidetracked with the history of Zionism here.
But here's the point, though, that they have all these this group and that group and whatever, and I don't see that. I'm seeing now that this is all it's all theatrics and play. Okay,
if you're not a globalist, I mean, Yeah, how
no,
much knowledge are you going to have? I'm saying, okay, so I'm a globalist. You have your Kushner, your other globalist people that
Yeah.
have the global vision. If you're an isolationist, how much do you expect to have on the global stage?
But then if you're a truly nationalist or isolationist country like Israel says they are, why are all of your leaders from a communist country?
Well, I mean, that's just the history of. I mean, you're talking not Lieberman and the people who came from Russia a few decades ago. You're talking like Netanyahu, the people who came from Eastern Europe
They're all Russian Jews.
70, 80 years ago.
They're all Russian Jews.
Well, because that's the population center that the majority of the Jewish population from the world comes from the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. I don't know if it's Russian, Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth that came to Russia. I've done that stream. So you want like a history lesson on Jewish demographics and population and Zionism.
Okay, but we get the same, it's the same general area, post-Bolshevik era. And they've all, very similar backgrounds. So again, if you're a very nationalist or isolationist type of country, you're not going to elect your leaders that come from a communist background. I mean, it's just
Erika, you're overemphasizing. You're spending too much time on the nomenclature of the ideology. The big reason that, just the 2-second history, the big reason that lots of Jews started leaving Russia after 1973 was that Russia took the side of Egypt and Syria in the Yom Kippur War, and were worried about it once Egypt and Syria were beaten, because Nixon wanted them beaten, and actually Kissinger wanted to stick it to Golda Meir and side with the Arabs. So there's another level for that. But once they were beaten, the Russian government under Brezhnev kind of wanted a lot of the Jews out because they were worried about a fifth column after the Soviet Union took a much more decisive pro-Arab stance in 73 than they had in 67. And so lots of Jews, with the help of Scoop Jackson and whatnot, the United States started leaving both the United States and to a certain extent, especially in the 80s, for Israel. I mean, this is like, there's a huge history behind this. It's got less to do with globalism or communism versus Zionism and more just to do with the internal politics of the collapsing Soviet Union.
That's what I'm saying. It's one of the same. That's what I'm saying. It's one of the same because they still have Russian Jews as leaders in Israel to this day, presently. And so that's what I'm saying. And who benefits from the Greater Israel Project? I haven't really studied that, so I can't comment too much on that, but I'm wondering, my next question is, who benefits Israel project construct?
Well, in this deal, I mean, it looks like you're just creating an alliance between the wealthier Gulf states and Israel and Trump, Europe, so they're consolidating power and say, okay, large parts of the Middle East are falling apart. Whether they really care about Palestine or not, or the economic vision, but they're strengthening the alliance between the wealthy Gulf states, Israel, and the Trump administration. So I mean, that's
the Greater Israel Project. Is that what you're saying? I'm not too familiar. I'm asking you guys. What's to educate me on.
Well, I don't know what you mean. I mean, Greater Israel. You're talking about the annexation or something, which Kushner apparently that's not what he's talking about. So there's the shift from what Kushner is talking about and what Netanyahu, because Netanyahu is now talking about annexation, and Kushner is talking about economic development for the Palestinians, trying to make the two-state solution still viable or something like that.
I think the Palestinian thing is just the red herring. My question is, the Greater Israel Project goes from I can't remember the two.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
1982. Okay, there's a lot of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories on this crap. But in 1982, in a defense strategy journal, there was something called the Yinon Plan.
Okay.
It's never been taken super seriously at the top levels of the Israeli deep state, but it was thrown around with the idea that Israel would expand to the east all the way to the Tigris and Euphrates and down.
Then they would have to take over
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Okay.
And so they'd have all that, and it'd be like the biblical land again. But the reality is, Jewish demographics wouldn't allow them to occupy all that land, and they probably wouldn't want to rule over that many Arabs anyway. And so the people that say that that's Israel's grand vision, Israeli politicians aren't that stupid. Yes, there's probably some crazy Messianic Jews, perhaps, but that's not really what's going on at the top level. I mean, people at the top level of Israel are far more pragmatic than people think, and it's anti-Semites that think they're all crazy.
That think who is all crazy?
Oh, just the Israeli leadership. I don't think they're as crazy as people think they are. I mean, they're just like every other, national leadership of most countries. They're trying to pursue rational ends and expand and get more economic development and improve their security, doing all sorts of things that normal states just do. I mean, that's just how things work.
What they're going to have to do to take over the Middle East is first to balkanize it. That's what we're seeing right now is in process is the balkanization of the Middle East. Once that's done, right? We were talking earlier about putting people in little smaller groups. It's easier to control. Then like how we're seeing communism coming into America. I believe in my is communism worldwide, and that would include this area that you and I and Doooovid are talking about right now. You know what I'm saying? The end game will be the communism, and in process right now is the balkanization of the Middle East to make it more controllable, and then we're going to see another push for something else after that. Is my prediction. That's kind of what I think might happen.
Yeah, but if you have isolationist tendencies, whatever it's going to be, you're not going to have any. America's not going to have influence in the outcome of it.
Right.
What's going to be is going to be.
Right.
And however that plays out, that's going to play out based on the parties in that region.
Right.
And America's willing to cede interest versus you thinking you have an active interest in trying to direct the outcome.
Well, having an active interest is completely different than pulling the plug out from or maybe shooting a big ass hole in your ship and watching it sink. That's what they're doing right now. They're driving this country, right straight down to the bottom of the ocean, and that has nothing to do with an American interest anywhere else. That's their goal right now is to drive our economy and our country into the ground.
Yeah, that's right now. Israel, Kushner, even the Democrats want to leverage U.S. power to implement their vision in Israel, as opposed to just pulling out and letting the cards play as they might with the players in the region. But I think even the Democrats aren't really talking about pulling out. Both sides, whether they have different visions, want to exert U.S. power to.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, yeah.
So if you're just saying you want to pull out and what happens, that's whatever.
I'm not saying pull out. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that the conflicts that are happening in the Middle East, trying to balkanize it, because when you split it up, then it becomes easier to take over.
Well, saying they want it balkanized from the perspective of what would happen if you had a pan-Islamic empire that arose again in the Middle East, and saying so the Western interest possibly is, certainly Israel, but even the U.S. or Western interest, Russia might have an interest in preventing a pan-Islamic empire from arising.
I think
so it's saying if we pulled out and a pan-Islamic empire arose from those nations, and you say, okay, so be it. We'll see what happens.
We're seeing a pan-Asiatic. I don't know if I said that right. Influence and control and power, and the form of government is communism.
Somewhat. I don't think that's accurate, because Korea.
I'm saying. I'm simple.
You really have conflicting interests in the Far East. That certainly India and China. India is moving more capitalistic, and I don't think South Korea
or corporate. Is it really capitalist or is it corporatist? We have to ask that.
Well, corporate is either way. Corporate is not. You call it oligarchy. That there's a global move towards oligarchy, and you could have oligarchy in capitalism, communism, or socialism. That's that the rise of the elites, the rise of the concentration of power, concentration of wealth, depending on how the economic structure,
Mhm.
but just for the power imbalance or balances that the Middle East, if the Western influence stopped meddling, you might find a rise of a pan-Islamic empire in the Middle East, and basically everyone outside of the Middle East is moving to prevent that. And it's not just Israel. And so if you're in isolation, you're just like, okay, I don't mind. We'll pull out, and if Israel tries to bomb Iran, good luck. See what happens. And if a pan-Islamic empire rises and takes over Israel, or you have an active approach that we need to exert our power to try to create some sort of vision there, and then there's all the competing visions. And if you want the policy, the different visions of Israel, the different visions. Saying presumably if you're U.S. isolation who wants to return to the general principles of the founding of America, you're probably not a Middle East expert, and you probably could care less.
Well, here's my question: do you see Israel as a Western country or as an Eastern country?
Israel's the border between East and West.
In their philosophy, in their culture, are they more Western or are they more like an Eastern?
Right now, they're bent more Western, but I mean they're a mix, but I mean they're not technically Western, but I mean they're certainly, I mean, because of what you were saying, Russia, the majority of the Jews coming from Eastern Europe, the majority of the population of Israel comes from Eastern Europe. It has a Western leaning.
Right, and what they're doing, I think there's a lot of things that are in change right now. That the things are changing, definitions are changing. What used to mean one thing, maybe 100 years ago, kind of means something different now, and they repackage shit and whatever. But when you say U.S. or Western interests, or like the United States, it's really more. We're more of a proxy. We're more of a control arm of, Israel. Really, we behave in such a way that it benefits Israel first. Then, if there's a benefit, it'll benefit us second.
Yeah, maybe you mix terms and saying there's what you might call like a global Zionist interest versus the actual state of Israel's interest. So there might be global corporate banking interest that isn't really centered in Israel proper, but you might use the term for the global banking corporate interest that it's similar to Zionism. It's similar interest, but it's not actually based in Israel. It's more globally based versus the actual Zionist interest of the people living in Israel and what they're trying to do. That's why you see Kushner, the Bahrain Conference, is more your global corporate Zionist interest, as opposed to the actual people in Israel that might have a different vision. That's why I say in Israel right now, they're thinking annexation.
Right.
They're thinking, I mean, God forbid, they're thinking either expulsion of Palestinians or annexation or, perpetual occupation, as where Kushner, from the global Zionist corporate perspective, he wants a different direction. But it could be that the current situation, Kushner has the upper hand on Netanyahu. So Netanyahu right now, in order to regain,
really, I mean,
Netanyahu's
go ahead.
Netanyahu's right now talking about annexation, the death of the two-state solution, and Netanyahu just wants to annex the West Bank, as opposed to Kushner is talking about, $50 billion economic plan for the development of Palestine to make the two-state solution more viable, although they could correspond that, they'll go together. But I'm saying certainly you have to recognize the factionalization between, even within Zionist interests, that there's not, even within different schools of Zionist, global Zionism, global corporatism, there's also strong factions between them that are pushing in different directions. So I mean, you're against all of them. Say that you're against all the Zionist interests, but let alone your opinion right now is extremely small, and there's really no power base in the West that's a vehicle towards your opinion. The debate right now is between the different factions of Zionists.
Okay. All right.
Okay, it's really important to realize, like, you need some context. I'm just reading this Ansel Pfeffer book. way back in 1994, a year after the Oslo Accords, and the famous photo of Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat shaking hands awkwardly on the White House lawn in the Rose Garden. You know, Netanyahu started his career with the PLO are terrorists. We don't trust Yasser Arafat. We don't want to give the Palestinians autonomy. Moving toward annexation has been part of Bibi's political platform and vision for a long time. Compared to most other Israeli politicians, what makes Netanyahu so unique is he's had basically the same platform and approach to like geostrategic issues for such a long time without changing. While most other Israeli prime ministers in the history have actually been pretty flexible and changed their geostrategy over time, given both internal politics and exterior development.
Is this what they mean by the Likud party being very extremist, extreme right? Right?
It is a right-wing party. But the way it developed was that Netanyahu had a network that was started by the Lauders. Okay. Lauder this is the Estee Lauder, the Hungarian Jews that are behind all the cosmetics. They were one of the first people that Netanyahu latched onto when he was Israeli ambassador to the UN and living on the Upper East Side, in the ambassador headquarters and whatnot. And Netanyahu developed a large network of right-wing Jews and even a few goys who would kind of back him, put him on TV. He was on Ted Koppel numerous times as the quote-unquote terrorism expert throughout the 1980s. Whenever something would happen, they'd have Bibi Netanyahu. He wrote 1 or 2 books on the subject back then that are kind of garbage now because they don't matter for anything. But the Likud party is part of a coalition of right-wing parties. For instance, Netanyahu also screwed over. It was very terrible to the Mizrahim. There was a pretty decent housing secretary named David Levy, who Netanyahu upstaged and screwed twice. And so it was one of the reasons that he wasn't able to be the first successor of Rabin. It was Shimon Peres instead, because David Levy's faction of the right wing wouldn't back him. Okay. So it's complicated. Israel has many more parties. When you think of Likud, do not think GOP. Think coalitions. I mean, Israel's a parliamentary system, which is more chaotic even than some European systems in terms of how parties form and relate to each other.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation, because I wasn't sure. This is a big learning process for me, and I find this very interesting and very stimulating. So I want to say thank you to you guys for spending the time to explain stuff.
Yeah, I'm thinking about wrapping up. I gotta get to sleep. I'm not sure if there's anything either you two want to talk about more.
No, just to touch base on that document that I gave you, the Google Drive, and Gandalf, I'd love to send it to you as well. So I don't know.
We'll talk about that on your channel next week.
Yeah. Again, if I could get your email, Gandalf, I'd love to send it to you, or hang out.
Actually, send it to. Send it. I'm actually lying down and I got to take care of my dog. Send it to Doooovid.
All right.
And Doooovid will send it to me, and we'll next time do it or something like that.
Yeah, I contact Erika through Twitter and Gandalf through Facebook. So I'm gonna Facebook Gandalf Erika's Twitter.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate that, Doooovid.
All right. It was fun, guys. Thank you. I hope we do this again real soon.
It was fun. Thanks for having the post-debate stream, and hopefully I got people somewhat more informed on a lot of these issues, because I try and get people to have a pretty nuanced view of politics. And thanks very much for hosting this, Doooovid. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, thanks for coming on. Tomorrow I'm going to be on Church of Entropy for the prep stream for her appearance on JF on Friday. So they'll be completely talking about the quantum mind and physics and panpsychism. So I'm looking forward to that. That should be interesting. I don't think it's interesting enough to do another post debate stream for the Democratic primaries tomorrow, but and it might already be like a month or so out till the next one. And so the next major thing coming is the fundraising release July 15th, and we'll see how much money these people have, and then they have to make the new like I follow Tulsi Gabbard on Facebook, and you got to have 125,000 unique donors, and she's up like 80 some thousand. So you're gonna have to see how many candidates make the cut, and we'll see the direction of the conversation. But obviously we're all generally right leaning, so the majority of the debate is going to be on the left, at least till as 2020 gets near, like November, but it'll probably be to not to the spring of 2020 till you have serious debates on the right wing about the 2020 elections. But because of the presidential primary, the next 6-8 months, that's going to be dominating the political scene. So for us right-leaning people, the streaming will probably be more dominated by talking about what's happening on the left.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Although I will say, just a point of clarification on economic issues, I'm more sympathetic to the left than the right, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm a registered
I care about.
libertarian. I mean, technically, I'm registered in the U.S. as a libertarian, and I doubt I'll vote. But I follow this stuff, and I'm policy, so maybe me and Gandalf are gonna do some streaming on history of World War II.
Cool.
I'm not.
Love that.
Gandalf's a big. Me and Gandalf are both big bookworms. Erika, you're pretty smart. You get interesting theories, but I don't know how much you're into books or history or how much you know about World War II.
But I am actively researching World War II from a revisionist point of view, and I know that's an unpopular thing, but I'm sorry, but
yeah, I would enjoy debating with some of those people.
Yeah.
I think did Brian Ruhe or something? Did you stream?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I would be interested in even having formal debates with some of those people. So, we'll talk again on your channel next week about the thing that you sent me. And, maybe over the next few weeks. Kevin McDonald didn't respond to my email. Hopefully he'll do that. But I would be interested in even talking with some of the revisionists. And Gandalf also, is quite knowledgeable about World War II, and that's from my top 10 subjects that I'm always researching. I get a wide view of interest, consciousness, physics, Judaism, but certainly World War II. There's always books on my table about that, and revisionism is a sub. Obviously we're going to disagree about that quite a bit, but that might make for some interesting conversations.
Yeah. I more disagree with what World War II means, and I disagree with both the revisionists and the establishment. So it's going to be very fascinating once we get into that.
Very interesting. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. Let me know when you guys stream about it.
Okay, have a great night, everyone. Tuning into my channel for the first time. I think because Halsey's a pretty popular streamer. So, Gandalf and Erika, you got to, talk to the famous Halsey, and that probably led to, new subscribers to my channel and bigger viewership. If Halsey wasn't here, the viewership probably would have been half of what it was.
Right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And I had a great time.
Yeah, wonderful time. Thanks all. And I'll talk. Hey, well, what time is your stream tomorrow, Doooovid, with Church of Entropy?
It's called for 9 o'clock, and she might have you on also, but that's purely a prep stream for her appearance on JF Friday. Okay. And she'll probably do a post stream on her channel after the appearance. So we're not going to be talking about any of this tomorrow. It's just going to be preparation for panpsychism and the quantum mind.
Awesome. Okay, it's a pleasure. Good night, all.
But if you do enjoy those topics, please tune into that.
I will. I'll try.
Okay.
I'll try.
Definitely. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Have a great night, everyone.
God bless.